Okay, we have about 1 minute. Is the WeStream set and going? Okay, it will start in about 1 minute. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting, Township of Wainfleet, August 4th, 2020, and will please stand for the national anthem. Okay, the land acknowledgement statement. We'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. I look to disclosures of interest, general nature thereof. Councillor McCollum. Hang on, you don't have a mic there? 2 mics are missing. We should get those hooked up before we go any further. So.
Public Works Report 007-2020. I have a conflict.
Okay, thank you. And I also would like to declare an interest on the agenda under notices of motion respecting short-term rentals, as a relative of mine has an establishment in Wainfleet. Now the mayor's remarks. Please note that the meeting proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the township website and youtube.com. This afternoon I attended an infrastructure funding announcement by Premier Ford in Beamsville earlier today, after which we were pleased to welcome him to Township, where he visited our very own Marshville chocolates. There's some good pictures up on Facebook, and it was excellent having him here. We got a photo out front with our electronic sign, and there was some chat about the school funding program for the school behind us and everything. So it was a good chance to let the Premier know issues going on in Wainfleet. Our Regional Council will meet next Thursday, August 13th at 6:30 p.m. Our next regular meeting of Council is scheduled for Tuesday, September the 1st at 7 p.m. It's 4 weeks from tonight. And we've officially entered stage 3, as everybody should know, and we ask everyone to be mindful of public health recommendations as well as the township and regional bylaws. And now I look to if there's any remarks by any councillors. Okay, seeing none. Shouldn't we have Donna on the screen here? Okay, we'll just hang on until we make sure that we have Councillor Cridlin included in our meeting here. Mr. CAO, also the monitors aren't on here which is usually where I look to see what's going on. Yeah, we'll just take a 2-minute recess here till we get all our IT issues straightened away. Can you hear us now, Councillor? Oh, there you are. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Richard, can you hear us? Can anyone out there hear us? Meredith, Richard, anyone?
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay, Richard, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. We got it now.
Lee, can you hear us? Here we go. We resume our meeting. Councillor Cridlin, we were just finished the mayor's remarks, and I was looking to see if any councillors had comments. Did you have any remarks?
No, thank you.
Okay. Look to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting held July 14th. Are there any comments or corrections or of that regular meeting? Anything need to be changed in the minutes? Okay, seeing none, a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held July 14th, 2020 be adopted as circulated. Mover seconder, please. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Van Vliet. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I have to do a recorded vote again. Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor?
Thank you, that's carried. We move to delegations. Please note that the delegation listed on the agenda this evening, Kimberly Pilot, request to have Young's Road South paved, has requested her delegation be deferred to the September 1st meeting, and so that has happened. The next item is Hugh Goodwillie, staff report ASR 2520, COVID-19 impact report. And Hugh Goodwillie has announced a delegation request to speak ASR 2520, COVID impact report. I now invite Mr. Goodwillie to the podium to speak, please. Welcome, sir. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes for your presentation.
May I take the mask off? Your Honor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. This came up quickly. I wanted to talk with regards to the COVID report and the beaches section. I gather that the council has had many comments and concerns about that, and I would just like to let you know that my cottage is at 12245 Lakeshore Road, across from the Cove, Long Beach, and so my remarks are primarily based on what I've seen at that location, but I gather that they probably can be applied to most of the locations. As you know, the beaches are much narrower than ever in recent memory, and the crowds are even bigger this year with pent-up demand from release from the COVID-19 restrictions. Other thing that is causing the large crowds at our beach is the fact that many of the other beaches in the area and in southern Ontario are closed. And so Wainfleet being open, it's the go-to beach for the peninsula and other areas, even talking to some people from Port Dover. The first weekend in July the 18th, the police were patrolling the beach for the first time. I had talked with Councillor Cridland previous to that, and I think that it was due somewhat to her initiative that we did get finally some beach patrol. However, the police arrived at our beach, Long Beach, around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, as many of the visitors were on their way out. So it was not terribly effective. In talking with one of the officers, they agreed that they should be here earlier. The next weekend, there was poor weather, and therefore there was very little activity at the beach. This past weekend, we had the largest crowd ever at our beach that I can recall, and I've been coming there for 77 years. This is the Augustine Beach access. Unfortunately, I gathered from the report that the police have taken over the action of patrolling the beach for you. And unfortunately, this did not work. They sent a cruiser or a motorboat 50 feet out in the lake to try and control the crowds and see what was going on on the beach. And this was just not an acceptable method to do that type of the work that was required. Then there was no show again on Sunday because of the weather, and we saw no one today, although the crowds were not that large. I did talk to police on the first, and they really didn't know what their role was to be there. Either Wainfleet hadn't explained that to them, or someone had not let them know. The things I think they should be looking at is trespassing, particularly Long Beach, which is not a public beach. Crowding, social distancing, people are right close together and not looking out for their own safety, let alone the safety of all the others. Possession of alcohol, excessive noise, and rowdyism. The police were there. They seemed to think their role was to sort of glad hand with the people and say hello and chat and smile and do that type of thing, which really wasn't the purpose, I thought, of having police patrolling the beach. So therefore, I would like to make some suggestions for council, if you wouldn't mind, and I'll give you a copy of the report afterwards. I think that even though it apparently costs Wainfleet some money to have the police under their control, that's definitely what you want. You want people walking up and down the beach, and if you are in charge, you can tell them that they should be there between 1 and 4 p.m. That's when that's the height of the activity, and that's when we need the protection and the authority of the police. And so you must give them the instructions as what you want them to do. And then you must also request from them immediately after the weekend results, statistical results, and even other commentary results of what they found when they're doing the beach. Visual type things are also required. For these beach access laneways, I would request that and I've asked Councillor Cluden previously, that the snow fence that was put down the property line from either side of the Long Beach access be reinstalled. And it was my hope that they would put up a sign similar to the sign that the Conservation Authority uses, which says, "Private property beyond this limit, please respect the privacy of our neighbors." As you know, Long Beach is not a public beach. And it is the impression that's given by council, by the resident, by everyone else, is that it's come to Long Beach. It's a great place to be and stay. Well, it's not a public beach, and if we're going to have all kinds of problems with the beach, then the owners and the residents are going to be seriously put out by this. I think a sign should be included at the entranceway. Trespassers will be prosecuted, or whatever wording you want to use on that. Something that alerts the people in large type that there is a narrow 66-foot wide public beach. The rest is private. And the entrance, the signage at the entranceway, at least to Long Beach, is a series of small signs that you have to walk up to and actually make an effort to read them, rather than something that's big and says trespassers will be prosecuted. Beach is only 66 feet wide. Respect the privacy of the beach owners. And as well, we should have something big for, with regards to COVID, if people do happen to spill over onto the private areas. Then I would hope the council would make an effort to reach out to the cottagers who are in the private beach cottages and get together with them and see what we can do with this problem. It's an annual problem. It's worse this year because of the things that I've listed. And I think that it would be great if somebody on staff perhaps could organize something and get the people to participate and come up with answers. The other thing I would like to see is the snow fences that I talked about. And somebody this year from the Long Beach Property Owners Association on the east side of the laneway has put their own snow fence down with a sign saying keep off. I've asked the president of our association to do the same on the western side, but that hasn't happened. And in past, I don't know why we have to, because a township did that, put those signs up. So if we can get the police working to what they should be doing in patrolling, if we can get the word out that it's not a public beach, and if we can put up the signs, get the community together to help council design what needs to be done, then we can accomplish something. The season is more than half over now. And what I'm afraid is that council, looking at the issue tonight, making some kind of recommendation, something is going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks' time. And as you know, Labor Day is pretty much the end of the season there. And so we've gone through a whole season tempting a COVID outbreak and antagonizing the cottage owners in the area. And if something can't be worked out, then I strongly recommend that council take the same action that other beach communities have done and close the beach down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goodwillie. Motion delegation presentation by Mr. Goodwillie respecting staff report ASR 2520 COVID-19 impact report be received for information, and have a mover seconder to receive it. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan, and discussion. That is on the agenda this evening, Mr. Goodwillie. We are going to be discussing beaches, and many of the points that you made we've looked at. The instructions to the police were to do enforcement only, like aggressive enforcement. In fact, I said those words myself to them. We've had snow fence burned. We've put it up in trying to control different areas, and we had a couple of 100 feet of it burned. So this has been, the beaches have been front and center with staff and myself daily. We are trying to get it figured out, and we're going to have a discussion on it this evening, so you might find that very interesting. So just to the yep.
Long Beach is not a public beach. That's what we have to remember when you're dealing with Long Beach. I'm not sure about the others. They may be public beaches, but
yeah, we have 5 beach areas that we're working on, but the big problem one right now that we're receiving the most information about is Augustine, Long Beach. And so it is front and center for us. That's our problem area. The emails that I've received, the phone calls about the things going on there have been disturbing. And so we are very, very alive to it, and we definitely are going to be addressing something here tonight with it. So
great,
your points are all well made.
I'll stay and listen.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Could I ask you a question, sir?
Mr. Goodwillie, can you come back up to the mic there? We have some questions by staff.
Thank you, through the mayor. I just wondered, you referred to last weekend as being the largest amount of people.
Saturday, yeah.
Saturday. In your estimation, how many people would have been confined to the 66-foot strip? So that's question one. And also, just for my personal reference, how much area is there from where they walk through to the water's edge? So we know it's 66 feet wide, allegedly.
Yes.
Would you estimate that there's 50 feet from the, or 100 feet, or
Well, in front of our cottage, which is about 10 cottages down, there's about 20 feet,
20 feet?
30 feet. This is the narrowest beach we've had in years and years and years and
Yeah.
years.
So do you have any idea roughly how many people would have been confined to that area, which is maybe 2,500 square feet?
I didn't check that area. If people came with a big tent and a large group, there could have been 25 or 30 in one group, and a couple of twos and et cetera. But it just, because that fills up, so the beach fills up from there, and gradually the people move further and further west, and fill up the beach that way. And it was filled right to the Long Beach Resort this past Saturday.
Because basically the area that you're describing is about twice the size of this building, essentially.
About the width of this building, maybe.
Yeah, well, this isn't 66 feet this way, but it is this way.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if there was 100 people there, well, that's a bit of a problem.
And carry that all the way down.
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, most people don't confine themselves to that area. I mean, we definitely have talked about and need to fence that with something better than snow fence. But the real problem is that they just pour over and disrespect the landowners. And like, this is the middle of my second term, and I've heard about this every year since I started.
Yeah.
And I'll probably hear about it every year till I'm not here. But I mean, we have to do something, I agree, but the problem lies with the personality of people that aren't showing respect to the landowners, essentially.
Yes, and the fact that this year with the beach so narrow and many extra people coming here,
Yeah.
that wouldn't maybe normally come because they might be at Nickel Beach or they might be down.
Yeah, no, I totally concur with that too.
Yeah.
Our
So that makes it worse.
issue is the ongoing problem faced by all levels of government is that it's very difficult to legislate common sense. However, that being said, we're definitely going to
I
address it.
appreciate the problem,
Yeah.
and if there's anything I can do to help you, or if you'd like to come down, and I'd be glad to chat with you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or questions to our speaker? Okay, seeing none. Recorded vote to receive the report. Councillor McClellan. In favor. Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And Councillor Cridlin.
In favor.
And that report is received. Thank you. Now go to admin staff reports, the COVID-19 impact report, ASR 25-2020, and Mr. Kalasa will give that presentation, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess at this time I'm providing my it's now becoming a regular update on the COVID. As was mentioned earlier, Niagara Region has moved into stage 3 of phase 2 of the province's reopening plan. As such, more and more businesses and public spaces are gradually reopening. At this time, we are nearing a point where the township will be able to reopen this building on an appointment-only basis. Our final protective barriers have been ordered. We are simply awaiting their delivery at this time, and then we will be in a position to be able to accommodate appointments with members of the public requiring to conduct municipal business. As with the process during the primary pandemic response, we are still going to encourage the public to utilize alternative means of dealing with us wherever possible. So electronic meetings, telephone calls, if we can avoid the public sort of coming in, that's our preference. But that said, once we do get our final protective barriers, we will be able to conduct face-to-face meetings, and we will be doing that here in the council chambers with members of the public as needed. Of course, anyone coming into the building is required under the new Region of Niagara face covering bylaw to wear masks in public areas of the building. And the council chambers that we're in right now, you'll notice that there is a sort of red divider just behind me, and that is the sort of differentiation between the public area and the employees or staff area, where members of council, for example, right now are able to not wear their face mask once they're seated at their workspaces. So we have similar rules in place for staff in the building. Likewise, when they're in the public areas, they will be required to wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. But while working behind the dividers, behind the safety protocols that are put in place, they will be able to move a little more freely and a little more comfortably in responding to the business they have to do. The next element of the report deals with the beaches issue. As mentioned by Mr. Goodwillie, there are continuing complaints coming in. The township has retained and paid for police coverage for 2 prior weekends, and the coverage that we sort of retained the police for based upon our requisition to them was, as indicated by the mayor, to include Liquor License Act violations, a focus on Liquor License Act violations, Trespass to Property Act violations, all municipal bylaws, Highway Traffic Act regulations, and as a sort of educational matter, as has been the practice region-wide, also trying to deal with some of the COVID-related regulations and orders that have come down from either the province or the feds. The issue that everyone is having, our bylaw officers, the police, the regional health department staff, is that those orders are extremely difficult to enforce in a large group or large crowd setting. Again, it's something that we're still working on, the police are still working on, and we still don't have the complete and final answer to deal with that. That said, there are a variety of options that were presented at the last council meeting for the consideration of council. And again, over the last several meetings, council has been grappling and trying to step up its tools to deal with issues that it faces along the lakeshore areas. Again, not just our beaches, although they're a primary one, but there are other facilities, for example, the quarry owned by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Area. We have issues associated with traffic and volumes on Lakeshore Road, speed, noise, fireworks, fires, all that sort of stuff. So again, to date, council has done a sort of step-by-step incremental tightening of regulations to try and deal with the problems that are being reported to it. And at the last meeting, there were a number of options that were identified, one of which we have prepared a draft bylaw for your consideration that tries to plug another hole that we have with respect to municipal beaches, and that is really a lack of real enforcement tools at the municipal level for those beaches. Yes, we have the Liquor License Act, which precludes people from drinking in public or drinking on a public beach, but that is something that only the police can enforce, and that is very difficult for the police to enforce from experience. Once people see police on the beach, for example, coming down Usually that stuff gets tucked away and becomes invisible. The advantage of having a municipal bylaw is gives us a little more flexibility and tools to deal with issues such as that. And the bylaw that's presented and attached to the report as an appendix is based on the regulatory tools that are used by other municipalities across southern Ontario, the Sauble Beaches, the Wasagas, and what we've done is we've taken a base bylaw that is sort of popular and sort of like the sort of, I don't want to say the Cadillac, but sort of represents the best practices, and we've tried to tailor it to our own sort of experience, our own types of complaints that we've received here. And I guess at this stage, that's one of the options that council has available to it to try and deal with these problems. The other issue, or the other options identified, include sort of an improved or an expanded public education campaign. Again, that speaks to some of the comments of Mr. Goodwillie with respect to signage and that sort of thing, educating the public, retaining additional enforcement resources. Again, we've used the police to date on 2 occasions. The police, after our use of them, we had sort of debriefing meetings afterwards with the new detachment commander out of Port Colborne, and it was confirmed at that time that the police would be initiating their own patrols at their own cost as part of their sort of response to Wainfleet and to Port Colborne for that matter. But additional patrols, and we've actually even started to explore the possibility of perhaps non-police patrols through security companies and the like that are being utilized by some of our neighboring Niagara municipalities. Option number 3 is the additional bylaws, and we do have one provided for you for your consideration. Option 4, again, taking a step back and temporarily closing the beaches is certainly an option. And then the last option that's identified in the report is revisiting the sort of traditional model of the way beaches are operated. And tied into that is something very similar to what the delegation suggested. And that option could include something like the development of a more comprehensive master plan for the beaches that could include consultation, could have sort of an expert in crowd control and crowd management in this type of field, provide some advice to us on how we can deal with these sort of outlooks to the lake that we have. Again, as has been mentioned, Augustine Road, our beach access is 66 feet wide. Once you get past the sort of trees and onto the surface of the beach, although we have 66 feet wide, if you look to the east and you look to the west, the beach stretches on for hundreds of feet in either direction, and those areas are not owned by us. And the question is, what can we do to sort of help deal with the public overflow into those areas? I don't think it's ever been really looked at the township. Again, historically, we've tried to do what we can within the limits of our ability, but perhaps it's time to really revisit that and sort of move forward. Again, it's not something that will necessarily be resolved this year, but certainly the hope or the thought is if we don't go down that road, we will have something in place for future years. I believe that pretty well covers my quick comments regarding the report. I guess at this time, try to respond to any questions, whether if I'm not able to, I know other staff have experience and the ability to speak to it as well.
So we'll put this on the floor. First of all, the admin staff report ASR 25-2020 respecting COVID-19 impact report be received, and that the draft bylaw to protect, prohibit, regulate, and control municipally owned beaches in the Township of Wainfleet be presented to the next available meeting for consideration. A mover and seconder to put it on the floor, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. And now for discussion, please. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to William. I did. This is not working? There we go. Sorry. William, I put a call in earlier this week to our planner, Sarah, and I asked a couple of questions. One of them was about existing parking lots and they're renting them out as paid parking spaces. That is not a permitted use under our current plans. So the one thing we can do is go after them and stop that, get rid of the parking. The other thing is and I know some of those guys do it and they're trying to make an extra buck and they only have a short season, but you know what? These people are taxpayers, they're paying a lot of money in property taxes and they're not getting any respect. That's not right. If I was living there, I'd be livid and I'd be a lot hotter than this gentleman was at our meeting tonight. The other thing is all of the side roads that run from Concession 1 or Number 3 Highway south, we should pass a bylaw, and I'm not sure how this would go, but we should pass a seasonal bylaw at the sole discretion of the road superintendent that there's no parking on either side of those roads during certain hours or certain days, so that we stop this. I went down Braun Road the one afternoon. There was 55 cars parked down the one side of Braun Road. We have one toilet. There's at least 300 people out there. We don't even meet a third world country standard for washrooms with what is out there. I don't blame these people. I'd be furious. And then I drive down to the Conservation Authority, and they've got a sign on the thing, closed to the public. I asked the girl, why are you closed? She said, we have 50 people on the beach. If the Conservation Authority has a half a kilometer of beach, and we got 66 feet, and they close after 50, we shouldn't even have anybody on the beach. Like, I don't know how this works, but we've got to change this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. All very valid and very good points. And again, I think that gets back to we need to fundamentally review the way the township is dealing with these beaches. So I concur wholeheartedly with your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor did you have more?
I was just going to comment that with respect to some of your recommendations, I mean, if that is direction that you'd like to give to staff to, for example, pursue the zoning regulations, pursue the amendments to parking rules on some of those approach roads, that is direction that we can take. We can research and we can prepare the appropriate responses in response to that.
Okay, so just note that Councillor McClellan, you're asking staff to follow up with that, and
through you, Mr. Mayor, probably the best way to do that would be to add that to the resolution, or we'll pass a separate resolution to take that direction away and add that to the work that we'll be doing.
okay, so good. That direction is then given. You need
A resolution would be ideal in that respect. Yes, a resolution, please.
addition to the motion.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, Councillor McClellan, would you like to just formalize that addition now?
Sure, I'll give it a try. So I would like, as a resolution, that the town enforce the existing parking bylaws, even for the commercial enterprises that are there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be zoning bylaw regulations related to parking on private property, making sure that any parking uses are consistent with the zoning bylaw and enforcement of the existing bylaw.
Okay, you got that one right, okay. Thanks, Will. What was the other thing that we...
Illegal parking on, or
So
parking on the north-south
no
roads?
parking on the north-south roads. Can we look into getting a bylaw for that that would be at the sole discretion of the road superintendent when they go up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to suggest we can certainly do the necessary bylaw amendments. I would caution about leaving it at the discretion of a staff person to make that call. A more appropriate thing would be to say, for example, from May 24 Victoria Day to Labor Day or something along those lines. We can come back with 2 preferred or recommended dates, and you would make it no parking on those roads during that time frame.
That works. Thank you.
Okay, we'll consider that addition to the motion as being a direction to the staff.
We'll vote on that, and we'll go from there. We'll need a seconder and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so Councillor McClellan has moved it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gilmore? Any other discussion? Meredith has her hand up.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think what would be easiest is actually to do it as a separate motion because it does sound a little bit more comprehensive. So perhaps after we're done with the first part of the motion, we can deal with that, and then we can have Councillor McClellan make a separate motion.
Okay, thank you. So I'll have to remember to do that. And I look to any other discussion on the beaches issue. Councillor Van Vliet, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have several things to say. Surprise. I was also down there. I was actually on Braun Road Friday morning at 10 o'clock, and they were already parked on the west side, backed up. I would like to see no parking. Can we not put no parking signs right away on that road? I don't know why they were not there anymore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In order to put up no parking signs, we will need to actually pass a bylaw adding those road sections to the existing township's traffic and parking bylaw. What we should do is actually go out to each location, determine the distance from, example, the Lakeshore intersection. How far back do you want that to go? Do you want it to go all the way to the end, or right to first concession? Okay, if that's the direction, we will need to come back with the necessary amending bylaw to put before you to enact, and then once council enacts that, then it becomes true, or it comes into force and effect. We will then need to get locates done if necessary, post the necessary signs if we have them in stock. If not, we'll have to order the signs, get them in, and then post them, and then we'll be in a position to be able to enforce them. So it's simply a bylaw amendment because we already have an existing bylaw that identifies the no parking zones, and it would simply be a matter of us coming back with that, putting it before you. We don't have that bylaw ready tonight, so it can't go tonight, but it could go to either the next meeting of council, which is in early September. If you want it done before then, council would have to have a special meeting prior to whenever in order to pass that bylaw, if that's the direction you want to go.
Okay, thanks for that, Will. I had other questions too. One question was, do we know how many tickets the police officers wrote in those days? Was it over and above what a normal patrol would be, as opposed to paying them $1,700 per officer per day? That was for 2? Okay. I'm staying corrected.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we don't have a specific number at this stage. We have an approximate number of about a dozen tickets per patrol, if you will. So not a very high number of tickets, no.
Okay, so here's my final, not really my final question, but do we see that we got value out of having the police officers, the paid police officers there? I'm getting a lot of questions about how much we pay in taxes already, and then we're paying on top of that to have extra police there. When I look at it, and when I was down there, I didn't actually see a lot happening as far as enforcement goes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's always difficult to evaluate the cost benefit of enforcement presence. I don't know how else to say that. When we contracted them, they started from early afternoon. We had 2 officers patrolling all of our locations along the lakeshore. So that's Reeves Bay, Augustine Road, The regional beach, which we own and which we don't own, but which we do operate on behalf of Niagara Region. We also asked them because we've been called out to the quarry to respond so many times to quarry complaints that we asked them to do that area as well. And in their spare time, which they indicated there wasn't a heck of a lot of, they also patrolled Lakeshore Road from a traffic perspective, watching out for Highway Traffic Act violations, that sort of thing. I guess I put it akin to something. It's kind of like a sort of a science experiment. When you have a new element introduced into the experiment, it changes the behavior of everyone there. So chances are, just by having police presence there, the people who were going to drink and be rowdy on the beach perhaps were a little more calmer and not obvious. Again, it's hard to quantify that from a cost-benefit perspective. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question right now. I can say that it is a significant amount of money for a municipality our size and with our budget to sort of incur or retain those resources on a continuous basis. Certainly it's not something we budgeted for. Certainly it's not something that we're anticipating in January, February when we were working on our municipal budgets for this year. That said, moving forward, as we develop plans moving forward, that's something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on. And as I say, alternative enforcement opportunities such as either additional, call them summer bylaw enforcement staff that we hire, patrol, train, outfit and patrol, issue patrols to, or private security firms, which I know Port Colborne, Fort Erie, St. Catharines, the other big municipalities with beaches rely on private security patrols. The issue that we have looking at them is that the nature of our beaches is so much different from Port Colborne or Fort Erie or St. Catharines. We don't have those delineated, fenced-off beaches that are all ours, that are all our property. We basically have a number of road allowances running to the beach, and then it, as indicated, it opens up from there. So it's a completely different sort of challenge for us, but that is what brings us to, we need to look to the future. We need to come up with a plan to deal with these. Again, we are in August now, season's not over, but we're coming towards the end of the season, and we really need to prepare for what comes next.
And just to add on to Will's there, I too questioned the value. It's a lot of money for 2 officers. I've done that job myself, and I believe that the part of what Will is saying is true, that once there's uniforms there, things tend to calm down until the uniforms are gone, and then things act up again. But I do question the value. We had them 2 weekends, and we were starting to say, the money involved because it wasn't budgeted. And it just so happened that at that time, the new staff from Port Colborne came over, and that is, while you were there, we had that conversation. And so one of the things, I know in other jurisdictions, places like this that have high beach use, influx of people from other communities, the police have a summer patrol, it's called in some places, and it starts Long May weekend and goes to Labor Day weekend. And they pluck a number of officers from different programs, and their job is simply those beaches all summer long. And it's extra pressure into those areas. So it's something that I want to bring up at the police board. And in fact, the staff mentioned that it may be something going forward from now because it is such a big problem. But that would be not just Wainfleet, Port Colborne, be Fort Erie, St. Catharines, everywhere. But a lot of the issues do come from the beaches. So it is an ongoing problem. As Councillor Gilmore says, it's every summer we deal with this, previous summers, and it's getting worse. It seems more people are coming down. So the one thing about the 66-foot right-of-way for the road, Mr. Goodwillie, is if we close that, as an example, then what will happen, could happen, is people will start trespassing through yards to get to the beach, which I'm already hearing about. That I'm getting some phone calls and emails about that even now. And unfortunately, then that falls straight into the purview of the police, because it's trespassing, which is under the criminal code, which is strictly the police. And so that is a problem as well in response time. So that's a difficult spot as well. So it's a very complex issue, and we've been talking about it, and we're trying to resolve it best we can. And it is challenging. So I know the bylaw, the draft bylaw here has a lot of the problem areas covered off, and so hopefully we'll see how that goes. Is there more discussion, questions? Councillor McClellan. Is your hand up there, Donna? Councillor Cridland?
Sorry, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, again, I'm following all the comments. I think I've lost track of what's on the floor, so if the clerk and the chair can help me there, I would appreciate that, so I'm not out of order. But we're in discussion mode. I think I'm hearing that we want to try to do something about the capacity. So all the parking options that staff could perhaps come back with that are within, our options to fold out or expand on. I like that. And I think it's the two areas. So it's whatever that Councillor McClellan has identified in terms of if there's a zoning irregularity use. And then, of course, all the streets going north and south. Maybe Councillor Gilmore can give us a little more history, because the Braun one, that's fairly recent. But again, we are in different times, so it might be that we can immediately do something and then change it if we have another 60 feet of beach next year. So some of these things are going to continue, and we're going to build this box of things that helps us respond and perhaps be successful managing it. So I like the idea of capacity, and I would support both of those no parking directions that I think are on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, and just to that point as well, one of the phone calls I received was a resident saying the reason we have a problem here is you have too much parking spaces. Get rid of all the parking, she said, and the whole problem will go away. So that was an interesting perspective. Councillor Gilmore, you have a comment? You looked like you had ready to have a comment.
Well, through you, Mayor, I'll try to respond to Councillor Cridland. So historically, in the last term, we tried to do things that would make the beach somewhat more accessible, and I think to some point we had some success, although this year is a bit of an anomaly because of all the other things that are going on. As far as getting 50 more feet of beach back, you can just forget about that for a long, long time, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not a meteorologist, but I don't expect the lake level to be going down anytime soon. So I think what we need to do, in my opinion, is first of all, for next year, not be late to the party. I think, and I'm no criticism on the current administration. I think every year where we come a little late to the party, some years it's not a problem because we have a terrible summer and nobody shows up, but, and that's unfortunate. However, and then the other broader issue, I'll come back to Councillor McClellan's comments from the last meeting. And while I don't disagree that we shouldn't be in the beach business, we have to come up with some hybrid model. If we're not going to close the accesses, then we're going to have to provide capacity control in some manner for most of the weekends. So that comes back to budgeting. So now, I mean, and the CAO and I have talked offline about budgeting for security and things like that for the next term. So So all that is going to, I think we need to be talking about this next February, not next June. And it's regrettable this year that the president of the Long Beach Homeowners Association is not able to even be in the country. So that doesn't help, the fact that, you know, Mr. Ball's not around. But so sometime as soon, you know, in the very early spring, if he could make himself available, maybe we need to sit down and talk with him. But the bottom line is we can't be late to the party, and we need to decide what model of the beach business we're going to be in. None, part of it, or mass chaos. And we're somewhere well towards the mass chaos part at this juncture in time. Some of those things I certainly hope go away by this time next year. However, dreaming about more beach, you might as well forget about that. It's going to be small, and so we're going to have to limit how many people come there. And the other component to this whole situation is, regrettably, the MPCA are holding almost all the cards to solve this problem. They're sitting on a large chunk of beach that they're doing nothing with, that needs to be developed, just like the other one down, you know, the regional beach. And the other aspect to the regional beach is, like, why it closes at 6 o'clock is beyond me. That's just another aggravating source to the public. What I don't want to see happen, and what I'm afraid could happen, is that the residents of Wainfleet that don't live there will have no access to any beach if we go too crazy. And that, and unfortunately, they're going to get caught in the crossfire. I don't believe that the majority of the problems are caused by Wainfleet residents. I don't have any way to know that. I just generally don't want to believe that. But the whole problem with this situation is people. If we didn't have to deal with people, we wouldn't have a problem, would we? However, those aren't going to go. So all that rambling to say, let's just try to get ahead of the curve for once next year, and deal with the known commodities that we know of. And if we have to budget money for security, then so be it. Because I, as Councilor McClellan alluded to, sympathize deeply with the residents of the lakeshore, who pay exponentially more taxes than a lot of the rest of us, and have to deal with disrespectful people. So that's my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you. So you hit a few points there that we've already talked about. I've asked the CAO to make sure that we work on this through the winter so that we are organized for next year. We talked about that a week and a half ago, so that we're not having to try to deal with this issue, when June or July hits. Secondly, the other one thing that people have spoken to me about is if you close the beaches or you restrict too much parking. I live in Winger, or I live anywhere in the northern part of the township, and people like to go down and go swimming after a day's work. Few people have said to me, why is that? I can't do that because there's no parking, or the one park closes at 6, which I agree, we need to address that. 6 o'clock should be 8 or 9. But the people in the north end of Wainfleet also like to access Lake Erie and need to be able to do so. So that, because we have to respect all our residents. So we have to look after the lakeshore people who are dealing with this, and yet still give some opportunity in people to the north to be able to go down after a day of working on the farm or whatever, and go down and go for a swim after the day. So it's a bit of a challenge, and we are working on it. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So on that point, the rest of the Wainfleet residents, we should be able to issue a sticker or something to each household that they can put on inside of their windshield that will say, Wainfleet resident, you come in, if you're in that no parking zone, you're okay, because you have a sticker there, and that will get you access to the beach for our own locals. But we're not gonna sell somebody 7 of them, so they get their cousins and their brothers coming from Toronto down here. You get enough for your household. And the other question I would have, and this would probably come through Richard, but the 66 feet, we keep putting up snow fence and it gets burned, it gets pulled out with a storm and all that. I'm just wondering if there's, at some point, we can't go out 25 or 30 feet into the water and drive a pile into it that goes down 20 feet or 30 feet, so it stays there. And you drive one at each side and there's your 66 feet. Then it's easy enough to put a 2-inch ship rope across and you hang your sign, public beach between these 2 signs, and that's it. And I don't think that's a whole lot of money to do. You need some permits, but that's another thing we could look at.
Okay, that's good. Again, something for us to work on through the winter, for staff to work on. And like I say, I did ask the CAO to have this all looked after for next year, so that through the winter we can approve bylaws and put in place budgets and that sort of thing. I threw out the number of $25,000 just off the top of my head as a potential amount of money on a line for funding, for security, for the unknowns that pop up. I don't know, that might not even be enough, but the things we did talk about. So we are very much aware of it. Your point is excellent. And I really do like the sticker on the window, because that allows Wainfleet residents to be able to park. The thing that we do have to be careful is the Constitution. You can't exclude a group of people from a public area, and so we'll have to look at that in certain ways. I know some other municipalities are doing it, but I won't make comment about that. But in Canada, you cannot exclude any group of people from attending a public area, and so just because you don't live here doesn't allow us to stop you from coming. So it's a bit of a gray area that we have to be careful about. Any other discussion on the beaches on this? Councillor Van Vliet.
Well, this is for the bylaw. Are we speaking to the bylaw yet of the beaches?
Yeah, we can look at the bylaw, and you want to work through it, or?
Well, I just had a question about animals. It says animals, so we can't take our dogs to the beach?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what the bylaw is proposing is no pets on the beach, no animals on the beach. The one exception would be service animals under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So if you do have, for example, a seeing eye dog or another animal that is there to assist a person with a disability, that type of animal would be permitted. Again, that is what is being proposed based on what we've done in our research of best practices across the municipalities and in response to complaints that we've received. But again, it's within council's decision scope to sort of say, we'll let dogs, like, that's really your call as a council.
Okay, because that's one I can actually see being a problem, because I know a lot of people who take their dogs to the beach. But, I mean, I don't think anybody's taken a cow to the beach.
Animals would include things like horses, though, for example, so no horses on the beach.
That one I completely understand, but I don't get the dog one, and also the motor vehicle one. So on the beach, does that include the, so just pick a road, I can't even pick like a road allowance. So you, pardon? Daily ditch, okay, thanks Terry. You can't park on the south side, or you can't drive onto the beach, because I have pictures of people actually driven onto the beach this weekend.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If you flip to page 31 of 88 of your agenda package, each beach is clearly delineated in the bylaw. So you will see the yellow shaded area for Daily Ditch beach access, and it basically stretches from the limits of Lakeshore Road right to the water's edge, that 66-foot wide road allowance. So within that stretch, you would not be able to bring your dog, you would not be able to drive your car, you would not be able to park your car, you would not be able to urinate or defecate, you would not be able to do all the things that are regulated by the bylaw. So basically from Lakeshore Road to the lake for the purposes of Daly Ditch. And again, each area is specifically defined. So for example, the Augustine Beach access would go from Augustine Road right to the water's edge, similar controls, and so forth.
The thing to remember there too is once they're outside that 66 feet, it's no longer our responsibility. So people could have cars, anything at all down there. It's all private land, and it's the landowner's responsibility to deal with that, not ours. So you could go down there, it could be 50 cars on the beach, but if they're not on our beach and we didn't see them go down there, then there's be very little that you could do enforcement-wise. So it's a problem being only 66 feet, but it's also a benefit. So.
Yeah, the mayor makes a good point. Again, this bylaw specifically deals with municipally owned property, which is, again, very clearly delineated in the schedules. We would not have jurisdiction, for example, for Long Beach or at the Augustine Road site for anything to the east or to the west of that 66 feet that we own. So you could have a dog on that beach, you could have a barbecue, you could have a campfire on those beaches. The owner of the property might object to it and be able to call the police to do some enforcement of those types of things, but we basically do not have the authority to regulate those private lands in the way that we want to regulate our own land.
Go ahead, Councillor Van Vliet.
Sorry, I have one more question. So at all our road accesses, as we do at Augustine Beach Road access, there's cement barriers. Could we not put cement barriers at all the road accesses and just stop people from getting through? And oh, exactly. Got it.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something that we actually had discussed at the senior staff level, and the fire chief and the operations manager both conducted patrols or inspections of all those beach access roads. And while it's not practical because of fire access, and again, the chief is here, perhaps he could speak to it some more, we are also investigating alternatives, such as gates that would permit, for example, a fire vehicle to get through, but which would prevent other vehicles from getting through. Chief, could you speak to that?
Yeah, very similar to what's along the Gord Harry Trail. So a 12-foot swing gate with pedestrian bollards both sides. So you would limit vehicular traffic to the beach access, but there would still be pedestrian access. And then those gates would be locked and all the fire trucks would have keys, very similar to what we have with the MPC lands and the Gord Harry Trail now.
But just with respect to those aren't free. So, I mean, again, we're talking additional costs. There's work involved in getting them installed. But again, things that we're looking at doing, we're trying to get all that together, and we're looking at doing some sort of implementation plan to deal with those coming forward.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Oh, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think I just want to go back to, a point that Councillor Gilmore made earlier, is that, the Long Beach Association, Owners Association, has also been less present this season than usual. And I think our delegator even alluded to that as well. So where we're going to take this bylaw probably to the next level tonight, I'm hoping that there's some engagement also with the residents. So for those that are watching for what's going to happen tonight, maybe they haven't had a chance to read it, but we'll do what we can tonight with it. But then it's out there before there's a final reading, before it's passed. So I think it's really, really important for people that are interested in, wanting us to do the good or the right thing here, is to know that this is now out there and that we're going to be looking for whatever feedback that we might get. And again, the fact that there's a gigantic group that are basically not able to do as much as they would normally do to help be the neighbor that we want to be. I don't know if we can mitigate that somehow, but maybe the CAO's got something there to offer us over this next couple of weeks. Maybe it can go out formally to the Landowner Association president, for example, as a draft, and reach out to them. So I'm kind of looking for the bylaw to be a role model of how we all want to act. And so it's got all the things in there. One of the things, so that it's a language that nobody would want anybody doing these things on their property, including us. So it also lets the residents, activate the bylaw with a complaint. So I think the language in there is really easy for them to say, look, I've seen things happening and we can start working there. But the only other thing was, do we have something in there that if we go the route of capacity, or we set limits, or we start to look at limits, will this bylaw give those people that have the authority to say we're at the limit? And I just wondered if there's some language in there that could be added, maybe doesn't need to be added at this point, but it was like, if at council or at the township's pleasure, we have a limit that we put in place, then this enforcement will also carry out on that limit. So mostly just the limit, and then again, how to continue to engage those that want to work with us. Thank you.
Okay, I'll look to the CAO to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in drafting the bylaw, trying to limit the number of people was actually something that we grappled with quite. We couldn't come up with a good solution. It gets back to the whole point I think Councillor McClellan made about attempting to delineate the beach that is ours. And we would have the ability to, for example, place a limit on the number of people that are allowed on our beach. We could do that. But in order to actually do that, again, we would have to clearly delineate the boundaries of the property. As with, for example, Port Colborne and Fort Erie, we would need to put some sort of mechanism in place, again, whether that's a body standing at the gate or the entrance to the beach that is keeping track of how many people are going onto that property, and then refusing entry to other people once the capacity is reached. Again, it's a different way of doing things. We couldn't come up with an efficient way to sort of control that, short of, again, stationing somebody there. And again, we're not just talking weekends, but we're talking every day of the week from the time the beach opens, say Victoria Day, to the end of the beach season, in order to effectively make that work. Again, it's not a bad idea, but we to date have not come up with a way to efficiently and effectively do that with the resources that we have.
Okay, final discussion on this, Councillor McClellan.
I was just going to say the reason the Conservation Authority at Long Beach Park gets to do it is they have somebody there full time, and they have a gate, so they just keep a tab of how many people come in. It's 50 people. That's the end of it. We don't have that, and we have no way of charging to go to the beach, so that's not going to pay for itself. So,
and that may form part of our line budget for next year that we're going to work on over the winter time. Anticipated amount of funds we require to try to monitor, and that's nothing's been decided, and we've had preliminary discussions about that. That we need to have it all in place by May of next year. So. Will, one more point. Or Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that those comments from the CAO, I was just looking to see then if we do go in that direction, obviously we can amend a bylaw to match that. So I was just looking to see if that could sit there if we wanted to do it later, but either way we can come back to that. So thank you. And then again, just the other point of reaching out to the president of the Landowner Association. I know we don't usually push out this kind of stuff, but if that could be something that staff would maybe consider on this, it might be helpful as well. Thank you.
Okay, and sorry, Councillor Cridlin, I should have come back to you there after the CAO spoke. So I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Any other discussions? Okay, so Councillor Van.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So we actually haven't resolved any issues tonight for this year for the residents at the lake to live through. They're still going to be living through chaos weekend. It's actually not even the weekends. It's during the day. I've been down there. So I still think we need to come up with some kind of a solution short term, put up a sign, I don't know. Like, I really don't know the answer. I know that we've all done this. We've all gone around but I think that they need to have some kind of solution, something so they can live in peace.
We could look at, and I'll throw this out, this bylaw covers off a lot of our problems. The parking issue covers off, will stop a lot of our problems. If we were able to get things in place by a week from now, we could have a special meeting sometime and just get this voted on and get that through, and then perhaps implement as quick as possible. I look to Will. I'm just conjecturing here, but Will?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. From a regulatory perspective, from a passing of this bylaw, from beginning enforcement of the zoning bylaw, which is Councillor McClellan's sort of additional resolution or additional motion, yes, those are things that we could do on short notice, fairly short notice. Again, with respect to parking on the north-south roads, the approach roads, again, that would require a bit more work from a technical perspective because there's additional signage and stuff that has to be undertaken. I'm thinking back to the zoning issue. Again, if we get immediate compliance from the property owners saying, yes, we will abide by our zoning, by the zoning bylaw and not permit any additional parking, forego that revenue, then the problem is solved right there on the spot. From a bylaw enforcement perspective, though, that doesn't always happen the first time you approach someone. Usually the property owner has a sort of response to any enforcement action. So we can't guarantee that we're going to get immediate voluntary compliance. And even if the property owner, for example, does say, okay, I'm not allowing parking on my property anymore, and the signs go down, no parking available, you've still got a situation where you might have visitors from Toronto or the GTA coming in, seeing an empty lot that they parked in the week before, park there anyway, and it becomes a parking lot contrary to the wishes of the property owner, which is a trespass issue, which you get into other enforcement matters altogether. So unfortunately, there's no quick and dirty solution to this. Again, it's a situation that has been developing over tens of years, decades, and we're at a point now where we're quickly trying to sort of respond to what's an evolving situation, even now with COVID and everything else happening. So yes, we can move fairly quickly with some of these things. We could have a special meeting to enact the bylaw, make the bylaw changes, and then get going on those from an administrative perspective. You could decide to take a step back and close, for example, Augustine Road beach access. But doing so, again, we would need to move quickly to do some fencing or some delineation of the property, and you couldn't just leave that alone. You would need to have basically enforcement there again during normal business hours plus every day of the week, not just on weekends. Otherwise, you will have people just walking past those signs that say beach closed and continuing on and doing what they normally do. So there's no silver bullet, unfortunately.
Councillor Van Vliet? No. Councillor Cridland?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just building on what Councillor Van Vliet has asked for, one of the other things that the delegation asked for, if it's something that we can do, is shifting the police presence from 1 to 4. So there were suggestions around what might improve the police presence. Mayor, perhaps you're best to speak to that, but that is something that might be easier to do than some of the other things we're talking about, and at least be doing something immediately. So thank you.
Yeah, just to the police, the first weekend we had them out 3 to 11. We decided, and they came back to us and said that it would have been much better at 1 o'clock. So the following weekend we started them at 1. Don't forget they have 5 beaches plus to look after, the roadways and everything. So ideally we get somebody down at Augustine Beach, and we did tell them Augustine Beach was the real problem area, And so I don't know. We didn't get reported as to exact hours that they were in those areas. But now that it's gone to the police themselves have implemented an additional patrol, summer patrol through Port Colborne and Wainfleet beaches, that equals less control by us, to the point of where we can let them know that the key time to be in Augustine is 1 to 3, but then they also have Port Colborne saying the key time to be in Nickel Beach is 1 to 3, et cetera, et cetera. So the competition for that patrol it has increased. So where before, when we were paying for it, we could say we want you on Augustine Beach from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So, but that has gone now with them having their own patrol. So again, more challenges in that sense. Will?
And just in response to, again, the police patrols, again, paid duty is still an option, notwithstanding the police sort of taking over. It is something that the township could still pursue. When we arrange for paid duty at the expense of the township, we are required to give the police our requisition for them to be there between 48 and 72 hours in advance of the day. And once it's booked, it's booked. So from a cancellation perspective, Councillor McClellan's, cancellation impacts are difficult. And from a shift perspective, again, the reason we chose the times we did was based on our own bylaw enforcement experience. A lot of the areas that we were having issues with were in the evening and late evening with fires and campground, things burning and fireworks and that sort of thing. So yes, we've tried to sort of accommodate all the issues that we saw with the patrols that we've had, focusing on the weekends. But again, during a nice weekday, the weather today turned out to be a lot nicer than it was supposed to. I think the storms are coming through tonight, but we don't have the nimbleness to be able to have the police there on 12 hours notice sort of thing. We have to schedule well in advance, and we're committed to it once we're there.
Okay, Councillor Van Vliet, does that satisfy at all, or is there?
It does. I just wanted to see things fast tracked so these people can enjoy some of their summer like the rest of us can.
Yeah, like I said, I'm concerned for this summer that we're way behind, and which is it's a challenge for sure, and I don't know if we're going to catch up. But which is why for next year we have to be all ready, all organized. We have money set aside, we have security planned, we have everything looked after. Just so many emails have come into our office about, and legitimate complaints. I understand all of them, and the people have phoned, and I wouldn't want that in my yard. People doing what they're doing in people's private yards. So we need to, for next year, have this looked after, and I've asked staff to do that. For this year, I think we we're in the position of limping it through to the end here, doing what we can, and going how we can with whatever we can. Perhaps that's more paid duties or what, we're not sure yet. So Councillor McClellan, you had one more point?
Just a thought when you were talking about that. I'm just wondering, I know staff interviewed for the bylaws officer. I'm just wondering if there is a second person that you had in mind that didn't get hired, that if there is, or there is, well, I'm thinking we've got a month left, so for the wages for a bylaw officer for a month, if it helps clear things up, it may be worth the money, because I'm sure that won't be as much as police for 3 weekends.
And our bylaw officer has done a wonderful job. She's written a lot of tickets, parking tickets, and I was talking with her the other day. She's doing a phenomenal job. So, Will, you had a comment on that? Just
to reiterate what the mayor said, our current summer student officer has done a phenomenal job. Unfortunately, you'll recall that when we normally hire our summer students in the early part of the spring, we were just entering in the COVID stage. We were in lockdown mode, and everything got put on hold from a hiring perspective. During that time, a lot of the people that we had interviewed or had scheduled to interview sort of continued on their way and found other employment during the course of the summer. We were lucky to be able to get one of the employees that had applied back, but unfortunately, there were no other candidates left. So unless we start over from scratch, and most of those people have already located new employment elsewhere.
Okay, can we vote on this? Everybody done questions? Okay, the motion is on the floor, so do a recorded vote in favor or oppose. Councillor McClellan for the bylaw.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor?
Okay, and that is carried. And now we'll come back to the other piece that Councillor McClellan had to make a separate motion, and we can vote on that. So if you could restate your motion. Or look to the clerk. We'll look to the clerk.
So that was that staff be given direction to enforce the township zoning bylaw with respect to parking on private property in the Lakeshore area. So that's sort of direction to staff to enforce an existing bylaw. And the other one was requesting staff to prepare an amendment to the parking and traffic bylaw to regulate parking on north-south Lake Road accesses between the months of, between Victoria Day and Labor Day? Or do we want to go beyond Labor Day and to Thanksgiving?
I go to,
Victoria Day to Thanksgiving.
Victoria Day to Thanksgiving. Any discussion?
Just a quick question. For your amendment, you wanted to go all the way to the first concession? Yes. What if we stop at the Gord Harry Trail so people can use the Gord Harry Trail? Because I just got an email about it just now. You did too.
So the problem is, they stop at the Gord Harry Trail. They've already walked now. We've backed them up.
Councillor McClellan, can you use your...
So we've backed them up almost to the Gord Harry Trail now, and they're still parking and walking down. They're parking beyond the Gord Harry Trail and walking down now. It was, from where it goes, like I said, I counted one Saturday afternoon, 51 vehicles. So they were well beyond the Gord Harry Trail and still walking down to go to the beach. That's why I said, again, maybe we get a sticker system where if you're a resident, you can put the sticker on your car and you park there. And
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I
ahead.
don't agree with going to the first concession because then people can't park to use the Gord Harry Trail, where there is no parking for the Gord Harry Trail.
so that's why I said where we get issue stickers, the township stickers. So now you put it on your car, you can park in a no parking zone.
So the thing we have to be careful here is that we don't stop parking for the Gord Harry Trail, because that's it's part of our heritage that people like to come and they like to walk on that trail. So I'm kind of thinking that Councillor Van Vliet has that right that we have to allow parking at that trail, because there's only a few spots where people can park their cars and walk in along the trail. If we put it right up to the first concession, and I totally understand what you're saying, but I agree with the sticker, but the question is, I'm from out of town, and I'm touring through Niagara, and I heard about this Gord Harry Trail, and I want to stop and go for a walk there. So they don't have a sticker, and they're not going to the beach. So
there are places, they can go to Station Road and park there. They can go to Quarry Road and park there. There are places to park.
But they won't know that.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Will?
So 2 points. One, the existing parking spaces, perhaps we can do an education type campaign to try and make sure that those parking spots for Gord Harry Trail are out there. Again, I think the NPCA does identify that within the scope of their websites and information, but we could identify that on our website as well for those wishing to park, to use the trail. Here's the best places to park legally. With respect to the idea of a sort of permitting process where people get a sticker, that is currently not a process that we have in place here in the township. If you do want to go that way, that is going to be sort of an extra additional process that we are going to have to sort out and figure out how we're going to implement. And again, the sticker will amount to a sort of permit system for parking. And I don't know that the bylaw is currently structured to accommodate that, but we'll have to put our heads to that at the staff level to figure out if you want to have those sort of stickers to permit parking, how we're going to implement that. Again, it's doable. It's done across municipalities, just that we don't have any stickers. We don't have any bylaw enforcement processes. Those are special, different signs from our regular no parking signs. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's a new twist, but we can do it. I just don't know how quickly.
And so if we were to implement the no parking up to first concession and not able to implement the sticker system, then we're stopping people from going on the Gord Harry Trail. So we need to find a piece of common ground here that works.
If you leave 5 spaces or 10 spaces for somebody to park to go to the Gord Harry Trail, they're going to park there and go to the beach. They're going to fill them up. Oh, there's empty spaces, a place here I can park. The poor people aren't going to get to the Gord Harry Trail anyway. Yes, it is. So that's the problem. You can do that on every side road and put 10 spaces to go to the Gord Harry Trail. And you can say Gord Harry Trail parking only. How do we know where they went? They're just going to walk to the beach anyway. People are people. I'm just telling you what happened.
I hear you. I hear you.
Councilor Gilmore was right. If we didn't have to deal with people, life would be
Some
easy.
of these things don't have a solution.
No.
They only have this is the best option. And, maybe this is one of them. Councilor Wainfleet.
I brought that up because we just got an email asking about that. So I had to bring it up, and it made sense.
So if we went all the way to first concession, which I understand, I totally understand that, then at those parking spots along Gord Harry Trail, on the roads that have no parking signs, you're going to have to put up signs that say no parking here, but you can park over here if you want to go to the Gord Harry Trail. Because you have to do something for people, because you can't favor one facility, i.e. the beach or Gord Harry Trail, over the other. They got to be treated equally. So we can't, to address the beach issue, stop people from using the Gord Harry Trail, period. So we have to do something. If you're going to do that, then we have to put up signs, or we stop it at the Gord Harry. I'm just not thinking off the top of my head how far from Gord Harry Trail down to the beach, how far of a walk is that along there?
The deputy chief advises it's approximately 2,500 meters, 2.5 kilometers.
2.5K from Gord Harry Trail down to, that's what Google is telling you? Okay. Okay, Councillor Cridlin, you had a question.
Thank you. Through you, we're trying to get this passed, so I will support going up to the Gord Harry and no stickers for now, because we don't have the process to do it. So if there was something we wanted to do quickly, I think going up to Gord Harry might pass. I'm not seeing full support for going all the way up to concession, so I'll leave it at that. See what Mr. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you. And so, any other discussion on that? So are you looking for a friendly amendment or as a friendly amendment?
As a friendly amendment.
Okay, we'll note that as a friendly amendment. And so that motion is now out there, that it is no parking up to the Gord Harry Trail. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll do a vote on this now. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore,
In favor.
Councillor Cridland,
In favor.
and that is carried. Whoa, okay, that's the beaches. Now look to staff report 26-2020 capital budget update, and Mr. Colossa, you have the overview of that report, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, before going that step, we had talked about this bylaw coming back to a future meeting.
September 1st is what's on the motion.
Do you want to wait? Oh, it is September 1st? You're okay with that? Or did you want to, as a council, decide to have a special meeting earlier than that?
Sorry, not September, it says next available meeting, which was September 1st, sorry.
Unless there's a special meeting called. And again, we don't need an answer today, but that's something to think about. If you want it sooner than September, a special meeting would be in order.
Okay. Councilor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, William, how long would it take staff to get this done? Because if we wait till the next meeting, we lost the season, right? And these poor people got to put up with this. I don't know if you'll get signs even if we do it, but I don't know, maybe Richard can beg, borrow, or steal some signs from another municipality and we can pay him back and we at least get Braun Road done and maybe one or two of the side roads partially done so that we stop things a bit.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I know Richard's on the call. He might be able to speak to this better, but as I said, from a bylaw perspective, we could throw that together fairly quickly because we've kept the sort of the basics, and there's not a heck of a lot. Now, Councillor Cridland had proposed sort of reaching out to the Long Beach Property Owners Association. Sorry, forgive my. The property owners in the area. So, I mean, if we want to do that sort of public engagement, that need to give a little bit of time there. But I see Richard's on the line. Perhaps he could provide a comment about signs and the parking bylaw amendment.
Look to you, Richard.
Through your worship to members of council and Councillor McClellan. The sign, no parking, basic no parking signs are pretty much in stock at the region, and that shouldn't be much of a problem. We do have somewhat of a limited stock of the posts, but again, that's something that's capable of getting on order in short order. The issue becomes is the locates. So it's similar to construction projects. They've been really good with us lately. Probably take a week to get locates for, like, if we're just going to go after one road. Within a week, I could probably get locates. So, I'm looking at, a week to 2 weeks, and we'd probably be able to have one of those roads done.
And we are talking about several roads, not just Braun, correct? It's all the north-south ones in the vicinity of our beaches, correct?
Speaker.
Yes, but my thought was if before the next couple of weekends, if we can get Braun Road done, and so the next one down would be Station. We're not going to worry about that. So then if we just go one to the west of Braun and get that one done, right, or some of the side streets that are there, right, so that at least it takes the pressure off Augustine Beach.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, starting with Braun as priority number one, and then the other north-south roads moving from there.
Okay, so why don't we look at that, have staff just take a final look at that in the next day or two to make sure that it all can happen. If it does, I'll call a special meeting for as soon as possible, and we can have that meeting and vote on this and see if we can get it through, and then execute as soon as we can afterwards, once we know all the tools and everything's in place. So does that sound reasonable? Okay, so the motion is on the floor. We went up only to the Gord Harry Trail as the friendly amendment, and so now we vote on that. We didn't vote on that yet, do we?
Well, we have to know.
We did?
No, we did not.
Okay, getting behind myself here. Okay, so in favor of that motion or opposed, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Okay, and that has passed. Thank you. Now we'll move on to ASR 26-2020 capital budget update, and I'll look to Mr. Colossa to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the late spring, during one of our early COVID reports, we identified that from an operational perspective, because of cash flow and because of shutdown impacts of private businesses across Ontario and across Canada, the township was putting a pause on a variety of our capital programs that were approved in the 2020 budget back in February, March. The purpose of this report is to provide members of council. Subsequent to that, we had heard from council and heard you tell us to begin proceeding once again with those projects as our capacity and as the community is able to proceed. So the purpose of this report is to present you with an update of the township's approved capital project list, as well as the status of each of those projects from a financial perspective and from a just sort of verbal update perspective. So essentially, we have a total of 30 capital projects that are approved and proceeding this year. The bulk of them have commenced and are well underway. Some of the big ones are awaiting various approvals. The two primary ones are improvements to the recreation complex, which were the subject of a grant application to the federal and provincial governments, and we're awaiting word from them on whether or not the grant is incoming or not, and that is in the amount of $1.58 million. The other major project that we have on the books is the new fire station construction project, which will be the subject of a report later this evening. And then the last big one, I guess, there's a variety of road program projects, but the really big one is the fire department's SCBA equipment, which is pending at any moment. So basically here to try to respond to any questions you might have, and this is just for information purposes.
Okay, thank you. So a motion that Admin Staff Report 26-2020 regarding capital expenditures to date and the status of capital projects be received for information. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cridland, I think I saw your hand up, and Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion, please. Councillor McClellan. Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote. Councillor McClellan to receive it.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And that is carried. Okay, we now go to our fire staff report 009-2020, second quarter fire and emergency services review. Chief, would you speak to that, please?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This staff report's for information only and highlights the department operations for the second quarter of 2020. I'll just do some highlights. Our recruitment program we're doing it jointly with Fort Erie. Due to COVID and the need to minimize class time and interaction, some of the theoretical pieces we moved to a blended online and practical, and we've postponed some of the classes. That said, we still managed 78 hours of recruit training between April, May, and June for a total training time of 192 hours for our recruits from January to June. With that said, the recruits were going to hit the trucks on July 1st, but given the hard work that they put in and the blended model that we put through, they actually began responding June 1st, a month early, with the caveat that they will continue with their fire prevention training and their NFPA testing in the fall of 2020. So that'll continue. Our officers' meetings did continue via Zoom. And then with the province moving us to stage 2, we began in-person meetings again. With that said, in regular firefighter training as well, we were running a Zoom-based theory training And when the province put us in stage 2, that allowed for groups of 10 or gatherings of 10. We went to station specific, rotating the stations through the various training modules, utilizing the 2 training houses that we are currently using. And I've listed the topics that were covered over the last few months. We were still operating fire inspections on request and complaint as required by the FPPA. And of some of them were the result of post incidents, and some were re-inspections. And in all, while there was some non-compliance, we were able to get compliance at the end. Under operations emergency responses, our call volume for the first or for the second 3 months of the year did continue to be lower than normal, with only 24 calls in that 3-month period. Largely being vehicle collisions. However, very similar to the rest of the province, we have seen about a 13% increase in structure fires. Unfortunately, the more time people spend at home, the more careless they tend to get, and we have seen that that play out as well. So we're in line with the rest of the province. With our communications, largely a lot of the hardware issues have been corrected through the warranty period that we established in the project last year, and any issues that continue to arise are being dealt with the vendor. With that said, our current dispatch, we're dispatched through St. Catharines Fire. And St. Catharines Fire, along with Niagara Falls, Niagara Region Police, and Niagara Emergency Medical Services, in preparation for Next Gen 911, which is supposed to hit in 2022, has requested that a third-party review be done of all dispatch and communications across the region in a shared review. That presentation was made to the CAOs in June. And we are waiting for a response of support to move that review forward. As approved in the capital budget project, just a kind of an update on the SCBA, or the self-contained breathing apparatus. We've continued with the background work. We have struck an evaluation committee that consists of 1 officer and 1 firefighter from each station, including the deputy and myself. We have had presentations and training sessions on 2 manufacturers from various vendors. We will be conducting a head-to-head evaluation. The vendors have provided us with demonstration packs. We'll be doing head-to-head evaluations this coming weekend, putting each pack through various fireground operations and evaluating as such. Once we have conducted that, an RFP will be issued later this month, and it'll come back to one of the council meetings in September for the direction to purchase. So that is proceeding. It was put on hold pending the July 31st tax installments from a cash flow basis as directed by the Treasurer. And so I've already touched on training, and then our priorities. Again, we'll continue to work on our recruit training on the topics that were postponed, and beginning September, we will start the recruitment process for the 2021 recruit program. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Motion that Fire Staff Report 009-2020 respecting 2020 second quarter fire and emergency services review be received for information. Of a mover and a seconder to receive that, please. Councillor Van Vliet, Councillor Gilmore, and any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Recorded vote, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that report is received. Okay, we move on to Fire Report 010-2020, Central Fire Station Concept. And again, we'll look to the Chief to present on that, please.
Pardon me?
Mr. Mayor, prior to delving into this report, we're about 2 hours into the meeting. Did you want to consider a brief recess before?
Yes. Yes, we do. Sorry I lose track of time, and we'll take a 5-minute recess. We're good? Everybody good? Okay, I'll call this meeting. Donna, you're good? Okay, call this meeting back to order. And we are on the Central Fire Station study and looking to the chief to speak to that, please.
Okay, so this report, FSR 010 2020, is surrounding the Central Fire Station concept study. Back in February, following council conducting the tour of the local fire stations, and then again in January there was the report, the spatial needs report that was approved by council. The request was for a concept design to be drafted and preliminary costs based on 4 construction types estimated. There was also a request for a public meeting to be held, but due to COVID, that public meeting has not happened. As with a lot of the other projects, due to COVID, the capital projects, they were paused temporarily, and following the special meeting at council in March, was kind of reactivated. Or in April, I guess. So following that meeting, we went out to tender for request for a concept study. We ended up having 2 proponents respond. Both of them were reputable design firms in the Niagara region that have extensive experience in fire station design. And in the end, it ended up coming down to about $800 between them. So the firm that was hired to do the concept is White Line Architects. They have been involved in several fire station designs, including Burlington, Milton, Fort Erie, Grimsby, Orillia, St. Catharines, Thorold, Pelham, Brant County, and 2 in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So they have extensive experience in public safety facilities. So we met with them, the internal project team consisting of the deputy, the CAO, the manager of operations, and myself. We met with the design team and laid out the program requirements based on the objectives that were set out by council and the priorities that were established through the fire station surveys that were completed by council and the firefighters. And so through Appendix A, you have the Wainfleet Fire Station concept that provides, based on 4 construction types. Option 1, I'll just get here, being load-bearing concrete block building with wood truss. Option 2 being a complete pre-engineered steel system. Option 3 being load-bearing wood. Option 4 being a hybrid of pre-engineered in the apparatus bays and load-bearing wood in the administration section. At no point, we did look at a 2-story building. But given that it's still space that needs to be constructed, and then you have the additional costs of 2 sets of stairways plus an elevator if you want to be FADS compliant, and the annual maintenance of an elevator, the long-term operational costs kind of outweighed any of the savings that may have been found. Fire staff prepared the fixtures, furnishings, and equipment listing as Appendix B. That was take on current market values based on vendors in the area of what those items would cost, and then were put together. And then I shared that with the design team, and they put together the 4 project cost estimates. And so that's where we're going through. So I will take any questions at this point.
Okay, first, so we're going to go through this piece at a time, and we'll do step 1 motion, and there's a number of components to this, so we'll do one at a time, discussion, keep it simple, otherwise it's like 6 things we got to talk about. So I just want to remind everybody too that throughout this, our treasurer has said that this is a building that we can afford, and it is very workable. From the drawing you see, in my opinion, it's nothing spectacular, fancy. It's just a building that's going to house our fire system for 75 years at least. And so we'll move through and have discussion as we go. So the first motion that the fire staff report 10-2020 respecting Central Fire Station concept study be received. If I could have a mover and a seconder to receive that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. And now discussion to receive this report. Okay, Councillor Cridland.
Okay. So thank you, through you, Mary. You touched on it right with your opening remarks. I imagine finance is on the call. So just two things. And again, I think it's all covered, but now that we are into stage 3 with COVID and we have a sense of all of what that might look like, it's just a general question. And I think it touches it in the report. There are COVID impacts in terms of the build. That's something different. But the overall affordability that we did talk about, and we had a great report on that. Has anything then changed in light of where we are now? And again, I'm just looking for another reassurance on that question. And then the other question with regards to the build, just in general, I guess just confirmation, because it's something I haven't really heard of yet, that any run costs, because we don't know them, will come out of our existing operating budget. So we will plan that that is going to fit in our current operating budget. And that way I know it's covered. So if those two could be looked at, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cridland. And our treasurer is on away this week, so I will look to our CAO to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the first part of the question, which deals with sort of impacts of COVID on affordability long-term, at this stage, everything with respect to this project, at least, is still on track. There are a variety of external influences that COVID is having on budgets and on operations and on purchasing and on budgets of other levels of government that will all impact on affordability. But from a township perspective, we continue to be on track as we were when we were estimating these amounts earlier this year and in prior years. So in that regard, we're still on track. The second part of your question, I'm sorry, could I ask you to repeat that?
Thank you, through you. Again, a build out this amount and what it's going to cost to run it. We don't have any numbers what that line's going to look like. It's, we've got the build lines, which is great. So I guess really just the idea or the concept is that we're going to be running this out of our existing operations budget. And that's going to require obviously some jiggling and some planning, but my going in is that, this isn't going to increase it. We're going to be looking for things that will offset the run of this particular build.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps the fire chief could speak to that, but from my perspective, again, what we're looking at doing is replacing 2 old existing stations that are in subpar condition with one newer facility that is all housed under one roof, which is going to be new construction, which will hopefully present us with at least in the short term, a reduction in a lot of the expenses that we'd likely have to expend on old deficient buildings. Yes, the answer is yes, we would build those into our operating budgets moving forward. Chief, can you add to that?
Yeah, it was brought up about doing a calculation of the run costs, an estimated run cost, but that would require extensive engineering based on the 4 different construction types, because there is different insulation values, performance ratings of each building and envelope. So it was much greater task than just a concept study. Obviously, once the building's built and we've operated it for a year, we'll get a better picture, or once council decides as to what building we're proceeding with, then the engineering at that time, we can kind of get a little better idea of what the operational costs would be, based on the heat loss calculations and the engineering of that particular building. But the design firm at this point just couldn't, it was too high level to get into the weeds that far.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with those answers. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other discussion on this one, on this, just receiving the report? There's more components to it yet, so, okay, recorded vote on that, please. Councillor McClellan to receive the report.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Okay, so that is carried. The report is received. Moving on to the second motion, that the project proceed utilizing a design bid build project delivery model. And perhaps the chief can just explain that clearly.
Yeah, so at the May 14th meeting, I presented FSR 07, which was the project delivery models and the draft project charter. And in that report, I highlighted the pros and cons of the different project models, whether it be a design build, design bid build, just straight contract management. And so in this particular case, it is the recommendation that we use a design bid build to ensure that we are getting an apples to apples comparison of the construction costs for the building that's designed.
Okay, thank you. So this motion is that the project proceed utilizing a design bid build project delivery model. And can I have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor? Councillor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I have to go back then and ask the question because I thought we were going through this item by item. I look here when
We are going through it item by item?
No, but on the report, it tells us here options 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's bad information in here. To say that a steel building will last 50 years is complete nonsense. And this is skewed information.
Okay,
So we received this report. You're going on down to how we're going to go on. We need to know what kind of building we're going to build.
Okay, so hang on. So this is the information supplied by the engineer, is that correct? And the design team?
The design firm, yes.
So we're working off the professional opinion of these design people. So I don't know what.
I can tell you, I've been through steel buildings that are 50 years is a joke. You may have to put a new steel roof on it, but you're going to have to put a roof on whatever building you have for 50 years. You're not telling me that a steel building is going to fall down in 50 years, or the steel is going to be rotten? It's not going to happen.
Okay.
These are structural steel frames that are around them, sir.
Okay, so the second component of I think there's 7 motions in here that you're going to get into that discussion.
Yeah, I don't want this to go through and then it's done and we didn't get our say.
Well, you will have your say.
Yeah.
You're already on that road, which is good. It's good. It's important that it's out there. So, but this is just simply the design, bid, build, project delivery model. So do we accept that is what the real question is. Is that how we want to do it? And the chief explained what that means. So the motion has been stated, and I was looking for a mover and a seconder. So Councillor Gilmore, can we put it on the floor first and then Councillor Gilmore to move it? Councillor Van Vliet to second it? Okay, the motion is on the floor, and now for discussion, Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor McClellan's concern will be addressed in the the next one, in other words.
There were 7 steps to the motion, and we discussed whether we did it all at once or we did it one by one. So it seems logical that we broke it down one by one, piece by piece, and that also keeps the conversation much more focused as opposed to all over 7 motions. So that's it. This one here is, do we accept the bid build system? And Councillor Cridland has a question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So now that that's on the floor, as a layperson, when I come to this subject matter, I don't know that the design bid build decision comes before or after picking option 1, 2, 3, or 4. So is there a way to perhaps either have the chief prioritize these? So again, once it's on the floor, we have to deal with it, and I want to make sure the order of the discussion. So yes, there's lots, but I don't know which order is the logical order there. Maybe the chief could speak to that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, regardless, if council picks one option of construction type, you have done a design bid build. Because if you want a design build, then you're saying, here's the floor plan, here's the building we want, and every proponent brings you their own proposals of what the building is. And you could end up with concrete block, full structural, hybrid. You may end up with all of those proposals, but then you're not comparing apples to apples. And that's the downfall to a design build, is because typically what ends up happening is you have lowest dollar wins and you don't get the performance building that you want. And when we're doing this for long-term sustainable planning, cheapest isn't always the best.
Okay, Councillor Quidlin, further? Did that answer your question, or?
I just sort of have to follow the conversations of the other council members and, make my decision based on that and the report. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
So if we are going to call for all four of these, and we know there's one type of building that will last the longest, be the strongest, least, most efficient building, we're wasting three other types of building contractors' time to pre-qualify. If you're going wood trusses and wood-bearing walls, they're not disaster resilient. You can build anything you want into them, they're still going to burn down on you. The wood truss roof will still catch fire. If we're building a building that's going to stand, we have to look at what's going to be there. And to tell me that a steel building only lasts 50 years is a joke. So we need to pick what style of building we're going to build, methodology of how we're going to build it, and then get 4 or 5 pre-qualified bidders on that piece. We've already done this once and wasted people's time. It costs contractors a lot of money to get pre-qualified and to come in here. And if we're not looking at a stick frame building, why are we wasting a man's time and money?
That's, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that's my point. We're not, if council picks which construction type they want, then we're not wasting the framer's time, because we've already said, or you as a council have said, we're doing concrete masonry.
The problem is the information you have here, I don't know who put it together, but it's not right. Well, to say option 2 will only last you 50 years and it's costing you more money per year to run it, whoever put that together is wrong.
Well, that is a design firm that has built
then
12
I'm
fire halls.
telling you that they like to see other contractors doing the work, and they skewed the information, because that is wrong.
If you look at...
So,
if
I may.
I went through this with builders today.
Okay,
Sure
so, but our job here as council is not to, I believe, is not to examine the nuts and bolts of this fire hall.
Oh, but it most certainly is, Mr. Mayor.
No, because, let me finish. Because we have gone out to a professional firm, and they have engineers, and they have their people, and they have their opinions and their experience, and they've built 12 fire halls. So they have given us 4 options. If the chief liked option 1, for example, at $4,057,000, then to me, that is where we would go. Because we have the experts providing this information, and that's the process. So we don't want to get into the weeds of arguing whether this building lasts 20 years more, or this one lasts, or this one. These people have designed fire halls all the time, and so, I think that we should choose one and go with it. Go ahead.
We have a major project in Niagara. Engineered, designed, architects, the whole 9 yards. It hasn't got out of the ground, and it's already $5 million in contingency fund gone. And you as a regional councilor will know that. It's gone. They've already blown it. And this was all designed, engineered, done. You gotta pick the right building before you go in and start this. We have wood frame building. We have a block building over there. It's got no insulation in it. This is part of the problem with the thing. Then you end up with walls that are so thick you lose square footage. You have to decide on a methodology of building it and doing it and do the right one. You got to look at how airtight it is, how insulated it is, what kind of life it's going to last you. You can't just say, oh, this one's $50,000 cheaper, buy it. It's not the right way to do it.
We're not interested. The money's important, but it's important that we build a building and get value for our money. That we have a good building that is insulated, works well, will last 75 years, and goes from there. If one is 50,000 or $500,000 more than the other, or 200,000, whatever, that has to come into the equation, yes. But the bottom line is to make sure we build a good building, my opinion. And the chief has gone to this company, who are the experts. They build these things all the time.
No, they were the cheapest bidder. He just told us they were $800 cheaper than the next guy. We went with low bidder.
800 of how much?
And $10,000.
10,000?
Yeah, to have this study done was $10,000, and the next bidder was Ramondo Architects, and he was $800 more.
Okay, so it's not. It's a small percentage.
We still went with the low bidder.
But that doesn't mean their information is wrong.
I can tell you that this is not right. This is what we do, sir.
So what do you propose?
I would look hard at these metal frame buildings. That's what every skyscraper in North America is built up with, is steel frame buildings, and they don't fall down after 50 years.
But that costs, which one is that?
It's option 2.
No, sorry.
$60,000 more.
Option 2 is pre-engineered steel, a Butler building.
No, you have a different concept of what a pre-engineered steel building is.
That's what this is. As requested by you, Councillor, you asked for a pre-engineered Butler building.
Pre-engineered?
Yes.
No, I didn't say Butler. Pre-engineered buildings.
When we took a look at your shop, that's what you said you wanted.
We went down and looked at, go down and look at the end of Victoria Avenue and the North Service Road. There's a new building being built right there. It's a steel structure building with insulated steel panels on it. And I said insulated steel panels, not a Butler building with metal siding on it. You can say what you want. That's what I said. We went down there.
So just let me stop you there, because this is going to take a long time tonight.
Well,
so
I don't want to say that I'm in for something that was the wrong building.
No, but if you're saying the more expensive building is the better choice.
Right now, yes.
Okay, and where were you, Chief, on which building you liked?
It's not a matter of what I like.
What you felt liked, as in what serves your
right.
purpose.
I mean, when I'm looking at energy efficiency, I'm looking at longevity, I'm looking at operational costs. Those are all taken into consideration. And my recommendation was for the concrete masonry unit, low-bearing block, because I was of the mindset that we were comparing it to a Butler building as previously discussed in council. And I have built a fire hall that is a Butler building, and I can tell you the performance of that building is horrendous. The council of the day went with the lowest bidder. It was design build, and we ended up with the Butler building, and the dog slept around the foundation because it bled heat. It was horrible.
Go down and look at the steel building.
So
before we do
my recommendation as a professional who has built a fire hall before is not a pre-engineered steel structure.
Okay, so this could go on all night.
Yep.
So I'm going to come back to the second motion, and we're going to vote, and we're going to proceed through the process here and vote as we go. And in the end, it'll lie where it lies. So the second motion here, that the project proceed utilizing a design bid build project delivery model. And I was looking for a mover and a seconder for that. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Did we have that already?
Yeah, you had that up.
Oh, sorry. All right. Okay, and so any other discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Well, yeah, I still think that, I think Councillor McCollum, the devil's in the details in the next that. So I don't really have a problem with the delivery model once we pick what we want delivered. Like I mean, if the model works that way, then I'm okay with that. I mean, once we pick what we want, then that's the model that we're going to deliver whatever we pick. So I think the next one's going to be the challenging discussion. So just my 2 cents worth.
Councillor Cridlin, any discussion? Councillor Van Vliet on this motion?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I would like to agree then with Councillor Gilmore if we can do it in the reverse order, but I don't know what the option is to do that. So, I mean, can we move that that we then take care of that design bid build after we decide on option 1 or 2, and we'll come back and decide on design bid build.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that. So,
well, that needs to be supported. I'm not sure that that's the right thing to do.
well, I like the order that things are in because it just makes sense as we move through it. And the big discussion, and Councillor McClellan, you know, will be involved in the next component of the discussion. So to me, this is simply the process of, you know, delivery model. So I would like to see it. It's a simple thing. I would like to see that moved and gone. So that's my opinion. And if there's no opposition to that, okay, so let's have a vote. So those in favor of motion, the second motion, Councillor McClellan.
Explain to me what the second motion is.
That the project proceed utilizing a design bid build project delivery model.
And we will look at insulated steel panels, not Butler buildings?
That's the next one is.
I want to make sure that
The next one is request for request for proposal undertaken to select a firm for the design, engineering, contract management associated with the new facility, utilizing a load-bearing concrete, blah, 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 construction type as presented in option 1 in the concept study. That's the next one, which we can debate probably all night. So,
in favor.
So we're on motion 2, in favor. Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor?
Okay, that is carried.
Well, what about Donna?
Oh, sorry,
In
Councillor
favor.
Cridlin.
Thank
I
you.
apologize. I'm just not used to you there. So, and your vote was?
And sorry, in favor. And could I add that perhaps for this duration, we make a note to that these votes are noted in our minutes.
Yeah, I think they are anyways.
Okay.
They're recorded.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll put this on the floor. The third component, motion that a request for proposal be undertaken to select a firm for the design, engineering, and contract management associated with a new facility, utilizing a load-bearing concrete block construction type as presented as option 1 in the concept study. So to discuss this further, we need a mover and a seconder, and need a Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. It is on the floor for discussion. Any discussion? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question about the concrete building, because it says the interior walls are concrete as well. Does that mean that we cannot expand anything since it takes so much time to renovate that?
Expand interior?
If you wanted to expand the interior, I understand blowing out the walls for exterior part, but I don't know the interior part. I know what it's like to throw out walls for drywall and wood.
I mean, you can, but it's more work and it's messy.
Do you think that we would have a need to do that?
Looking at the current floor plan and the way it's laid out, I don't see it.
Because I know that we had discussed that in the future we could blow out the east-west walls to expand.
Yeah,
So-
right. But those are exterior walls, and,
Right.
and if you look at the site plan, that is the site plan does take into consideration for expansion. However, it's not that you would blow those walls out. You would end up reinforcing it with steel columns and
Sure.
to make sure
Just-
that those
just
are,
terminology.
because they are still load-bearing walls. That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other discussion. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make sure that we look at pre-engineered insulated steel panel buildings. That, I mean, I was there, I was at a site, another councilor was with me, we looked at them. These buildings are beautiful, they're strong, they'll last 150 years. And they're already insulated, they're done. The panels go up, it's done, it's got a standing seam on it, the roof doesn't leak. All the things that steel buildings were 30 years ago, these aren't anymore. And that's what's being built. That's what they're even building in for housing now with them. It's the way to go. There's one, you can go down and look at it. There's one being built right now. It's at the North Service Road, just past Victoria Avenue, where the fruit center is. There's a big white one with, I think it's got a black stripe on it. It's been a while since I went by. It's 2 stories. That's probably closer to 3 stories. Has a 2nd floor built into it. You can gussy them up any way you want. This is an industrial flower place.
So you're saying option 2 is the better?
Option 2 is the way to go, and you will have a far superior building. It's not an old Butler building that has metal siding on it and fiberglass insulation squeezed at every joint.
So if I may, option 2 isn't actually what you're looking at then. If you're wanting option 2, it's now actually become option 5.
That's what it will be.
And that wasn't done in this study because that wasn't the direction provided to staff at the time. So if we want to add it, that's fine, but we're just delaying the project further.
That's all right. It shouldn't take very long to get a price on one.
So that has to go back to the engineering firm, and now you have to say, now I want an additional design, the following, and that'll become option 5.
Yes, plus his cost to conduct that
plus
study.
The cost to do it, plus the increased cost. And you believe option 1 is a good building, and it's what you liked as a fire chief? I'm just trying to find.
When we did the station tour, of the 8 or 10 that we toured, I would say more than half of them were that exact construction type. There was 1 wood framed and 2 steel.
Okay, other discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would have the firm make an appointment with Corneef Produce and go look at the building on the corner of the South Service Road and I forget the street, but if you get off at Bartlett, it is just east of that interchange next to a big greenhouse that grows marijuana. But anyway, they just put up one of these, and it's exactly the same construction, although it's it looks very good. And according to what I've heard, it's super efficient. So at the very least, they could go and find out the details about that one, because that's not what we're talking about in option 2. So I would like to see that. What bothers me, and I think what bothers Councillor McClellan, is that I don't like that figure of 50 years lined up with all the other ones, which are more, because it tells me that perhaps they're a little slanted towards some other type of construction. Because I also don't agree that 50 years is the useful lifespan of a pre-engineered steel building. Now maybe that's the lifespan of a pre-engineered Butler building. I don't know. I don't know that. I just know that these new ones with the panels, engineered steel panels, can be decorated to look quite attractive. And actually, you should just take a drive there tomorrow. It doesn't take long to go there, and go look at it. And then ask them to make an appointment. I'm sure those people would probably be glad to let them in. And then I'd like to see those figures. So I don't know if we can work through the rest of the details and come back and receive that information and then make a decision, or if we have to I really don't want to delay the whole thing, but when I saw the 50 years, that bothered me, and I don't exactly know why. I just thought that it was slanted. That's all, and that's only my opinion.
Okay, so the building that you're speaking about, Councillor Gilmore, just as my own reference, can it be built to look like, like this, or is it different looking than that? What's that look like?
I don't think you can make it look like a block building with gabled trusses and things like that. I don't know that. I don't know that. I like the look of option one. I'll just tell you, I like the look of it. I just want to make sure that that we're not discounting something else because perhaps this firm, and I don't know this, but perhaps this firm is maybe doesn't like the other option. That's all.
Okay, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the discussion that I'm hearing, if there is a sort of a desire on behalf of council for a more detailed fleshing out of that option number 5, we can reach out to White Line Architects tomorrow. They are the firm, again, that has produced the 4 options. We can ask them to please review the option 5, which is the pre-engineered insulated steel building, which Councillor McClellan has referenced. We can ask them to either confirm that the option contained, option number 2, their pre-engineered building, is not the same as a pre-engineered insulated steel building. We can ask them to provide us with those numbers as quickly as possible, and then we can come back to you with that information. I think rather than spending a lot of time debating, we can use Corneef as an example. We can ask them to provide those numbers back to us and to reconfirm the 4 existing options that are listed here.
So I think that's probably the best bet here because of the interest in that model number 5. It'll delay for a little bit, but I mean, we're looking at next spring anyways. So we want to get it right. I would say that if we do that, then we stop the process here this evening because there's no sense going on any further because all options aren't included. So that would be my suggestion. Councillor McClellan, you have further comment?
Yes, so one thing that I will tell you, the insulated steel SIP building, they're not going to come with the steel girders that go out like in the arena. They come with, you ask for it, it's an option, you pay a little more, but you will get a steel beam that goes up. It's just an H-beam that'll go up, and it's no different than your block wall where it has the little square every so many feet that go through every 20 feet so your wall doesn't blow over. So it's the same thing as that. So it'll get drywalled and buried over. It's not this big arching piece of steel that comes out, and the same on the ceilings. So you can go in, that's an option. You pay a little more for it, but because we're trying to do what we're doing, it's not that much steel. We're not going that high. We're not going that far. But it's a far superior building. And Morgan, if you thought I was talking about a Butler building, I'm sorry. I apologize because that's not what I was talking about. This is, if you go and see one of these, you'll be impressed.
Oh, Councillor Gilmore.
Did I move this?
No. Do you want to move it to, go ahead.
Well, I mean, clearly I think we need to defer it to the September meeting. I just wasn't sure if I was the mover.
Did you have a further comment, Councillor Van Vliet? Okay, so there's no sense going any further until we finish our research on this. Chief has his directions. We'll make some inquiries on that. So we just need a motion to defer this until probably the next meeting.
Next available meeting.
Next available meeting. So who would like to make that motion? Councillor Gilmore, make it seconder. Councillor McClellan, and the vote.
It's not debatable.
It's not debatable, yeah, right. Okay, so that item is deferred. Oh, referral. I was thinking, okay. So Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
I'm just clarifying, I apologize, Mayor, that the motion is that the staff's going back and bringing back an option 5 to us. That's what we're voting on.
We're deferring, what we're voting on is to defer this report to the next available meeting. In that time, staff will go back and gather the further information, but the motion is to defer.
Thank you. In favor.
Okay, and Clerk Meredith, you had your hand up? Okay, and Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
Okay, so this report is now deferred to the next available meeting to give staff time to do that final bit of research. Okay, we move on to our planning staff report 008-2020, a request for lifting of 1 foot reserve at 51071 Deeks Road South, and I look to our planner to speak to that, Ms. Ivins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to Council, the Committee of Adjustment provisionally approved a severance of the eastern portion of 51071 Deeks Road South for a 1 acre residential lot that fronts onto Memmi Court. And as a condition of that approval, the 1 foot reserve that's located along the frontage of Memmi Court is required to be lifted. So a 1 foot reserve is a strip of land that's dedicated to the municipality through a subdivision agreement and a registered plan of subdivision. And they're typically to prevent access to a road until servicing and or financial obligations are fulfilled. In the subdivision agreement for Marshville Estates, there are clauses that require the owner of 51071 Deeks Road to pay cost sharing for the construction cost of the road prior to that reserve being lifted. The developer, being Memross Limited, has consented in writing to waiving any required payments outlined in the subdivision agreement, and have also consented to the lifting of this reserve along the frontage of the proposed lot only. So in my report, I've included a draft bylaw, which essentially deems that 1 foot reserve as being part of the public right-of-way, being Memmi Court. And approval of that bylaw would essentially lift that 1 foot reserve and allow access to the proposed lot so that a driveway and dwelling could be constructed on the lot. So I'm recommending that that bylaw be considered by council at a subsequent meeting of council.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is that council adopt a bylaw to lift the 1 foot, 0.3 meter reserve located along the frontage of Part 1 of 51071 Deeks Road South at the next available meeting of council. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Gilmore, and discussion, please. Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. Just through you, Mayor, just to clarify, when we lift it, it's lifted forever. It doesn't go back on. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cridland, that's correct. Once it's lifted, it becomes part of the public right-of-way permanently.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote in favor or opposed. Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to, and this is where we have a conflict. Public Works Report 007-2020 regarding the stop sign installation at the intersection of Lakeshore and Bessie Road. And we'll look to Mr. Nan to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. This is the report that was requested regarding by council at the last meeting. And this was in regards to a letter that was sent in correspondence from a Mr. Rankin requesting a stop sign at the corner of Bessie and Lakeshore Road. Staff did visit the location, met with Mr. Rankin because he was the letter writer, as well as a couple of the residents down there. And we reviewed several things while we were there. The topography, the sight lines on the intersections, roadway alignment, because it is on a curve. And staff are, there are complete engineering studies that could be done that normally are done to look into these matters. But because we did notice that the intersection is a skewed intersection and there's an elevation change at the intersection of Bessie, staff are recommending that we don't go through the engineering process at this point for this juncture. Staff are also not in a habit of putting stop signs in where not required because it's not to be used as a speed control device because it does cause further issues down the road. But in this case, because of the intersection itself, the design of the intersection, the sightline issues there, and the elevations, staff are recommending that we make an all-way stop at that intersection. Further to that, there are obviously some implications. So there's a couple of trees that have to be removed to additionally put sightline. Like when you're doing a stop sign, you have to have a sightline triangle for them as well. In most intersections, you're supposed to do that. So there are a couple of trees that have to be removed. We've identified one of those trees as being on Mr. Rankin's property. And he's agreed to allow that tree to be taken down. In fact, he would take it down himself, he said. One of the other trees to be removed is actually on town property. It's a very large oak tree. And so that's an additional cost that we'll have to remove. But technically, it's identified as a road hazard anyways, because it's within 12 inches of the right-of-way, and it has been hit by cars a couple of times in the past. So one of those things will have to be removed. We'll have to include locates, obviously, for the additional signage that'll have to be put up, stop aheads, as well as there's a change to the new signage from previous. So staff will have to purchase three signs for that purpose. We only have in stock the old signs for that type of installation. So we'll have to purchase new signs as well. And we're also recommending, because of the sight line and the lighting, the additional cost of putting flashing lights on it. Because of the intersection, because of the poor lighting, because of the curvature of the roadways and the approaches, and the tree lines that are all on private property, it's a pretty shaded area. So we're also recommending that we install flashing lights as well.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is Public Works Staff Report 007-2020 respecting stop sign installation at the intersection of Lakeshore Road and Bessie Road be received, and that council authorize staff to make the necessary arrangements for an all-way stop at the intersection of Bessie Road and Lakeshore Road with the additional flashing red beacon to improve the visibility, and prepare the necessary bylaw amendment to be brought forth at the next council meeting. I have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion, please. Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I happen to be familiar with this particular intersection, so I think staff has done a great job in defining that this is a road conflict solution and not a road calming solution. So that's going to be, I think other residents are going to be, perhaps coming forward with asking for a stop sign. However, and this of course isn't budgeted for. So in terms of the budget, I would take out the flashing lights. So we have nothing there now. I think just taking the trees down is going to be a huge or clearing the sight lines is going to be a really huge improvement. So I don't see the need for the flashing lights. If perhaps those local residents closest have demanded those flashing lights, I might change my mind. But I think with all the things that we are going to do on those corners, given the chart there, maybe, you know, in terms of cost, we could leave the flashing lights off. So I certainly support it. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I look to Richard. What's the cost of the flashing light additional approximate?
Through your worship, $690 is the cost for the flashing lights that we've received quotes on.
Okay. Other discussion, please? Seeing no other discussion, so do we have support for the request to change it to no flashing light? Is that in, that's red beacon to improve the visibility? You want to make a motion to change that? Councillor Quinlan?
Through you, Mayor, yes, I would make the amendment then excluding the lights.
Okay, so any discussion on that motion? Need a seconder on that, and then we'll vote on the amendment to the motion. So I need a seconder for that. Councillor Van Vliet seconds that. Okay, so it's on the floor. Any other discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, this is a vote on the amendment for removing the red light from the motion. And Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Opposed.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Okay. And I'm going to vote on this. I'm opposed. So it's a tie.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, a tied motion loses, which means that the flashing lights stay in. Okay, so the ruling from the CIO is that the flashing light stays in when it's a tie. So it is not going to be removed. So now to vote on the motion as it stands currently written. And I look to Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Okay, and that is carried. Okay, moving on to review of correspondence. So the first item of correspondence, sorry, John, gotcha, is C-184-2020 Niagara Region Declaration of Mutual Commitment and Friendship with Niagara Region and Friendship Center. Discussion from members. Council respecting this item of correspondence. And that the correspondence item number C-184-2020 from the Niagara Region regarding declaration of mutual commitment and friendship with Niagara Region and the Friendship Center support be received, and the council direct the mayor to sign the declaration of mutual commitment and friendship. Mover seconder to put it on the floor, Councillor McClellan, seconder, Councillor Cridland, and any discussion, please? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And that is carried. Item 188-2020, Gail Levesque, Chabad, Niagara, request for support of $100 and season's greetings in the Jewish calendar and program guide for 2020-2021. And discussion from members of council respecting this item of correspondence. And we'll decide on the motion how that discussion goes, if there is any discussion on that. Thoughts? Discussion? Councillor McClellan?
So this is supposed to be in at budget time so that we can decide. We've already made our donations to different charities and organizations. So maybe if we send them back a letter and say, hey, get it in February of next year for the following year, we can take a look at it, or we can just leave it sit. But
yeah, that's a good, that's actually what I was thinking about earlier. We were talking about it, and it probably best go to the grant process if council felt that that was appropriate. So is there any other discussion on that? Okay, so Councillor McClellan, you're making a motion that this be referred to our grant process and budgeted henceforth. So, and we'll send a letter accordingly to them to advise that, asking them to go into the grant process. Okay, so that motion is made. Seconder for that, please, Councillor Gilmore. And vote, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Thank you, that is carried. Okay, the next item is 189-2020 Hugh Goodwillie. Notice requirement representation from landowners, Long Beach site planning meeting. And I look to Ms. Ivins to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So a site plan application is required for the redevelopment of the Long Beach Resort property out on Lakeshore Road. And to date, a site plan application hasn't been received by the township, but I do know that the property owners and their agent are working on a submission. However, there's no ETA on when that submission will be filed with the township. Due to the scope of the redevelopment, council will be the approval authority for that site plan. So a future staff report will come to council for consideration once staff have done the review of the application, and I'll provide a recommendation on that application. So Mr. Goodwillie has made two requests of council. One, that council postpone any future meetings with respect to the site plan agreement until all American cottage owners are able to attend a meeting to voice concerns, and that notification be sent to all owners within a 1 kilometer radius of the property. So just for some background for council, under the Planning Act, the township has 30 days to make a decision on a site plan application. So when they do submit, I have 30 days to review and get a report before council for consideration. That is the law. And so if we were to exceed 30 days, we would be looking at a situation where the applicant could appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal for a non-decision within the prescribed timeline. So this means that the application wouldn't be able to be delayed if we were still in a situation where the border was closed in order to comply with provincial law. The site plan approval process also doesn't require a public meeting. So for example, in a zoning bylaw amendment application, we have a public meeting and notice is given to property owners within 120 meters. We have that public meeting at council, and then the following meeting, a staff report regarding my review of the application is given to council. It's not the same process for site plan approval. So no public meeting with an open mic format is required. It would just be a consideration of a staff report for the review of the site plan application. I have offered to notify anyone who wants to be notified of when the meeting date for when that report would be considered by council. So I've mentioned that to Mr. Goodwillie, and if he knows of any neighbors that would be interested in receiving that notice, I'd certainly do that once we have an idea of when that would be scheduled. And depending on when that is, should the border still be closed because of the COVID pandemic, we can also make Zoom participation available for those who register as a delegation. So again, because it isn't a public meeting, it wouldn't be an open mic format, but they could register to speak to my staff report, register as a delegation to speak to council on my staff report. And that would be a mechanism for them to make their concerns known, and we can do that through Zoom. So those are my comments for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you. So comments, discussion by council? Councillor Van Vliet?
Yeah, I would like to see that happen via Zoom. I was at the Committee of Adjustment meeting regarding this, and there was a lot of input from the community, so I think that we need to hear from our neighbors from the south. Okay,
other discussion? Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Sarah. Do you have a approximate time when this is going to be presented to council? I'm just concerned that, well, that if it comes at a time where after the emergency orders expire, then we may not be able to have Zoom meetings. Although if it comes in November, I think that the residents from California and Florida will be more than happy to Zoom in rather than Zoom in on Air Canada at that time. So I just wondered if you had an approximate timeline as to when this might occur.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilmore. I don't have an approximate timeline. I know that they're working hard to get some studies and some drawings done to support their application. I know they're eager to get going on it, but they haven't provided me an estimate as to when they think they'll be filing their application. But your point is taken about, being off season and perhaps making that Zoom participation available for delegates. I guess I would look to the CAO or clerk if that's something that we could extend beyond the pandemic if we receive it in the fall and we're able to have public meetings again, whether or not we would make that option available for those who are off season, not attending Canada or Wainfleet.
Okay, thank you. I'll look to the CAO to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there were some recent amendments made just prior to the province lifting its, formal state of emergency declaration. And the amendments are made to the Municipal Act, which do allow municipalities greater latitude to make changes to their procedural bylaws to permit electronic participation in meetings. We are currently in the midst of reviewing those legislative changes and preparing a report to come to Council with some proposed or recommended updates to our own procedural bylaw dealing with electronic participation at meetings. So if everything flows through stepwise, there is a potential that we will be able to accommodate that sort of delegation, whether there's emergency in effect or not. So chances are we'll be looking at that coming to a future meeting fairly quickly.
Okay, so can we have a motion there just so we can vote on that? Or that we go ahead, say it again, Will? So just receive the correspondence. Okay, so motion to receive is seconder, Councillor McClellan, and the vote in favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that is received. Okay, is there any other additional items of correspondence that on the agenda members wish to discuss or have pulled?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Cridland.
Could we pull correspondence C-190-2020 to the floor then? And I'll just read what I've got. That correspondence dated July 28th, 2020, from the town of Amherstburg, supporting the town of Renfrew's resolution, calling on the governments of Canada and Ontario to fast track Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant applications in order to provide much needed employment and investment into rural Ontario and to provide sustainable infrastructure that will be safe and suitable in a post-pandemic setting, that it's be received and supported. So we do see these regularly, but this one in particular is for us to support. And then further, that the Township of Wainfleet request eligibility criteria for infrastructure grant applications be expanded to include public safety infrastructure, including facilities. So I think we're going to add that, to our recommendation. I might go to the CAO now for a little bit of help just to see if I sort of have got that right.
Okay, so we'll first put that on the floor. That's your motion.
Thank you.
And so we'll look to have a mover and a seconder on that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. And now discussion, please, and CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Again, we've been approached by some municipalities suggesting or requesting support for the senior levels of government in fast-tracking the Canada Infrastructure Program grant program. The criteria for the program as it exists now is quite focused. And frankly, here in Wainfleet, we have a number of priorities that don't nicely fit into the existing program framework. One of those priorities is an item that we just discussed earlier this evening, dealing with a proposed fire hall reconstruction project. What this motion would do is petition the provincial and federal governments to make that grant funding available to support projects such as a new fire hall in Wainfleet, which we desperately need support for.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Through
Councillor Cridlin?
Then perhaps just back to the CEO, would it include then already bridges, something like bridges, the way it currently is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the grant program currently already recognizes road bridge construction. So
thank you.
The fire hall would be a new additional feature.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor McClellan?
You, Mr. Mayor, to William. How does this grant go? Is it a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 type thing, or how are they doing it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it is a split funding model. I know the fire chief has been looking into it as well as part of our own funding opportunities for the fire station. We've been exploring every opportunity available to us, and the fire chief has looked at this as a potential, but found that we did not qualify because a public safety type building was not one of the eligible projects. Chief?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So unlike the grant programs that were operated from 2008 to 2012, when we see a lot of the fire halls built for the $1/3 dollar, in the current program, the federal government set up the investing in infrastructure for Canada, so the ISIF. And the way it works is the federal government gives the province the money, and the province is the one who kind of disperses it. So the Minister of Infrastructure sets out where the funds go. So there's currently various streams. There's the green stream, the rural stream. None of those streams include fire stations. And that's what this motion is hoping to correct.
Okay, so the other question then is, if our fire hall is as energy efficient as we can get, do we fall on any part of it?
New construction does not count. If we were renovating everything, possibly. But then that's a separate grant application when it comes time to deal with our existing buildings.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion?
Done.
All right. In favor or opposed? Councillor McClellan?
I'm in favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
That's carried. We're going to move on to bylaws. No bylaws listed on our agenda this evening. And now I believe Councillor Cridland has a motion. Was that cancelled, that one?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, there's two. So the mandatory mask motion is canceled. The region took care of that. And then the other motion is the short-term rentals motion.
Okay, just before you carry on with that, I'm going to recuse myself because that's where I had the pecuniary interest on that one.
Thank you.
Okay. So at our last meeting, Councillor Cridland provided a notice of motion regarding short-term rentals, and the motion is, whereas the growth of unregulated sharing economy has required municipalities across Ontario and beyond to look at ways to address the challenges of short-term housing rentals, including attempting to balance and maintain affordable housing while protecting communities. Now, therefore, it be resolved. Am I reading that part too? Okay. Now, you're not Councillor Cridland. It's catchy. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, so I have a couple of things on this, and I guess it'll go to Will, and you can tell me if it works. One of my biggest problems or fears is the Airbnbs and the short-term rentals on the lakeshore. So we all see everybody's coming down here. They're renting cottages. These poor people wouldn't know what a septic bed or a well was or where you're getting your water from. If you're going to do that, I think, number one, they should be licensed with the town. Number two, if they're on a place that has a boil water advisory, it should be mandatory that they supply bottled water for everybody that's in the building. There should also be mandatory that there's a notice on the doors that this building is under a boil water advisory, so that the parents know, so they can tell their kids, don't drink the water when you're brushing your teeth, because the 3-year-old kid can't read and we don't want him getting sick. Like, that's one of my biggest fears on it. The other thing is, they should be classified and taxed as the same way a hotel is. If you're gonna get in this business and you're gonna do it and make money, the local hotel isn't getting it, so we should tax your building the same as a commercial hotel. And it should be, if you do it, you get taxed that way for a 5-year period. So you're going to get into it. You're going to make up your mind, I'm in this and I'm staying in it, because that's the way it should go. There's just way too much cash floating around that's going through these places, and nobody's paying. I think I looked last fall. There was 168 places on the lakeshore between Kijiji and one of the other ones that were on there. So, I mean, we got all kinds of people coming here. They have no clue what they're walking into and what their children are walking into with this boil water advisory and that. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In the event that this motion does go forward, that is all sort of stuff that would be looked at as part of the staff research and investigation. And certainly those are options that would be put forward to council for a decision on whether you want to proceed with that sort of regulatory framework. But those are all options, and yes, that will all be covered off in the report.
Thank you.
I have one question. Would there be a maximum on the people allowed to stay in the units? I noticed seeing them now, people are like maximum 12, 15, which doesn't seem right.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Again, if we do proceed with a bylaw to regulate, to license them, we could establish parameters for rentals, how many people are permitted per square foot or per dwelling unit or per bedroom in a dwelling unit. So those are all avenues that could be addressed through a licensing bylaw if we go that way.
Councilor McClellan?
Sorry about that. One of the things we should be licensing them on is the size of the septic bed. I don't care if you can sleep 20 people in your house. If you get a bed that was designed for 5, that's all you should be allowed in there, right? And we just did all of that in the last 5 years, so we should know what they are, right? So it shouldn't be hard to use that information.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, again, if we get into a licensing regime of some kind, that could be one of the requirements that we get from anyone we license, is that they have the appropriate septics and records proving that it's a working system, how many people, what sort of or capacity it has, all that information. So if we get that far, and if it's something council wants to go down, it's certainly something we can include as part of the review.
Any other discussion? You're good. So we vote? Okay, so we need to record a vote. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Quidlin.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. Carried.
So with that direction, we will initiate our investigation. From a timing perspective, we'll have to sit down with staff, and certainly we'll put it on our priority list, but at this time I don't have an exact date when it won't be in the next 8 weeks or so, but this is a fairly significant undertaking. And we have limited staff resources and a lot of things already on the go, but it's definitely something we will move towards very quickly.
Okay, so I'm guessing we're moving at the closed meeting part now? That's where I come back in? Will? Okay, the motion then, the council now move it.
Oh, excuse me, sorry, just Mayor, just a small point of order. I don't know if we asked if anybody else now has a new notice of motion. Those were just motions, so in case there are any notice of motions this time. Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're completely right there. Are there any further notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. I make a motion that council now move into closed session to discuss item under section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act 2001, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before admin tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. One item, a litigation matter. B, item under section 239(2)(k) of the Municipal Act 2001, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. One item, a negotiation matter. C, item 239(2)(c) Municipal Act, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. One item, a potential disposition of land matter. And the minutes of the closed meeting of council held July 14th. Mover seconder, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Okay, recorded votes. Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
And Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Okay, that's carried. We'll move into closed session.